The tale kicks off in Clay's kingdom, way up in the northwest, where we meet our main guy, Noor, who's busy cooking up some medicine for his ailing mom. She downs that concoction and is all gratitude, showering Noor with thanks for being her rock. Noor tells her he's off to feed the sheep real quick, and she gives him the classic mom warning to stay inside the barrier. He promises, saying he'll be back with some fruits and rabbit meat for a tasty soup. But then, out of nowhere, his mom starts coughing like she's auditioning for a horror movie, and Noor freaks out. He offers to boil some water, but she stops him, wipes the dirt off his hardworking face, and with a heavy heart, apologizes for not being able to give him more. She tells him he deserves to carve his own path in life. Fast forward to Noor cooking that soup at night with the rabbit meat and fruits he gathered. When it's done, he brings it to his mom, but she's not waking up. The reality hits him like a ton of bricks when he realizes she's gone. So he digs a grave for her right next to his dad's resting spot and sheds some silent tears. Noor spends his days hunting for food, wrangling his cattle, keeping his house spick and span, and diving into some books. Each day rolls by with him stuck in this routine, feeling lonelier than a sock in a dryer. One day, while he's not busy being a one-man band, he stumbles upon an old book in his house. As he flips through the pages, nostalgia hits him like a pie in the face. It's the same book his dad used to read to him. His dad spun tales of adventurers who could break curses in spooky forests, learn magic to become total wizards, team up to take down giant monsters, and even snag an all-healing potion from the Spirit King. No matter the crisis, these heroes fought to protect the weak, their crew, and obliterate evil like it was a bad haircut. That got Noor all fired up, and he wouldn't stop pestering his dad for more epic stories. In the present day, Noor has a light bulb moment, recalling his mom's wise words about choosing his own path in life. So he starts daydreaming about becoming an adventurer, because who wouldn't want to wear a cape and fight dragons? The next morning, he gathers a mountain of fees for his cattle, gives his parents a heartfelt farewell, and announces his grand plan to hit the city for his first adventure. With a mix of excitement and a sprinkle of nerves, he steps beyond the cozy confines of his home. After what feels like an eternity of solo trekking, he finally arrives in the bustling city. He approaches the gate guards, who point him toward the guild, probably thinking he's just another lost puppy. Once inside, his eyes are as big as saucers, taking in all the wild sights like a kid in a candy store. He makes a beeline for the Adventurers Guild, but the guild master, looking like he just woke up from a nap, tries to shoo him away, claiming it's no place for kiddos. But Noor isn't backing down. He tells the guild master that the gatekeeper sent him here, and he's ready to be a hero. The guild master, trying to be the voice of reason, warns him that his parents would be losing their minds worrying about him. Noor drops the ultimate plot twist: his parents are already gone. When asked for his name, he proudly introduces himself. The guild master, realizing he's got a determined little firecracker on his hands, suggests Noor start at the training school, but warns him it's not a walk in the park since they've never had a pint-sized candidate before. Curious, Noor asks what this training school is all about, and the guild master explains it's where wannabe adventurers pick their class and learn all the cool skills, like sword fighting and magic. Noor's excitement skyrockets, and the scene shifts to him at a swordsman training school. So, this guy thinks he's going to be the next big hero, ready to take down a dragon the size of a mountain with just one swing of his sword. He starts training like a madman, while all the other students are unlocking some seriously cool sword skills. Meanwhile, Noor's over there feeling like a green-eyed monster watching them level up. Fast forward a few months, and everyone else is making strides, but Noor. He's still tripping over his own feet. His instructor, bless their heart, tells him to throw in the towel. But Noor's got the heart of a lion and wants to keep swinging that sword, even if the instructor thinks he's just a talentless potato who can only parry like a pro. The instructor suggests he find a new hobby, maybe knitting or something, and points him toward other training schools. Noor, ever the optimist, decides to try the warrior school, thinking he'll be on the front lines, looking all heroic. He goes through some intense training, but guess what? Still no progress. After months of lifting weights and flexing, his instructor tells him to hit the road because all he's done is bulk up a bit. The instructor warns him he'll be a dragon snack if he keeps this up. Not one to give up, Noor tries the hunter school next, but surprise, 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 he flops there too. The instructor tells him he's not cut out for the delicate art of archery. But does Noor give up? Nope. He heads to the magician school, but all he can conjure is a flame that's barely enough to toast a marshmallow. Still not done, he gives the thieves' school a whirl, but he can't disarm a trap to save his life, let alone pick a lock. It's a comedy of errors. Finally, he tries the cleric school, but after months of training, all he can manage is a healing spell that's good for a paper cut. What a journey. So our hero trudges back to the guild, his heart as heavy as a sack of potatoes, only to find the guild master looking like he just bit into a lemon. Turns out, after all that training, our guy didn't learn a single thing. The guild master, with all the subtlety of a brick, tells him he's about as cut out for adventuring as a cat is for swimming. Defeated, our talentless wonder shuffles home, ready to break the news to his parents that he's got all the adventuring skills of a soggy piece of bread. But wait, he's not throwing in the towel just yet. He grabs a wooden sword and remembers his instructor's wise words about turning that one skill into something spectacular. So he decides to focus on his parry skill, training like a caffeinated squirrel day and night. A year zooms by, and guess what? He can now parry 10 swords at once. Sure, he hasn't picked up any new tricks, but hey, progress is progress. Fast forward 3 more years, and he's now parrying a whopping 100 swords. Still no new skills, but our boy is as stubborn as a mule in a candy store. He trains relentlessly, breaking swords left and right, and using his weak healing skill to patch up his battle scars. 10 years later, he's parrying 1,000 swords like a pro. But wait, he's still got the same old skills. The next day, he decides to give the guild another shot. He struts in, and the guild staff checks out his skills: parry, physical enhancement, stone throw, feather step, tiny flame, and low heal. The staff member raises an eyebrow, wondering if he's really serious about joining with those skills. She starts rambling about the training school system, but Noor interrupts, saying he's already been through all that. Now she's in a pickle, and Noor realizes he might just be stuck outside the guild doors forever. Just then, the guild master strolls in, squinting at Noor like he's trying to remember where he left his car keys. After a moment, it clicks, and Noor spills the beans about his adventures. The guild master can hardly believe that after all that training, Noor's big achievement is a slightly beefed-up parry. He explains the adventurer ranking system, from S the superheroes to E the, not-so-super. And to even be an E-ranked adventurer, you need at least one skill that doesn't make people laugh. Noor starts to think maybe it's time to hang up his adventurer boots, but the guild master throws him a lifeline, mentioning a secret legendary rank below E that hardly anyone knows about. Noor's eyes light up: an F-ranked adventurer? Sign him up. But the guild master lays down the law: no hunting or gathering jobs outside the city. It's all about doing odd jobs within the city limits, which is basically a fancy way of saying begging for scraps. Surprisingly, Noor is all in, and the guild master is left scratching his head in disbelief. But hey, a deal's a deal, and he registers Noor. With his adventurer card in hand, Noor is pumped and ready to tackle the odd jobs of the city like a pro. He's tackling them like a toddler with a puzzle, one piece at a time, while juggling his sword training like a circus performer. Time is zooming past as Noor plays superhero, helping everyone in the city like he's auditioning for a role in the Good Samaritan Chronicles. One fine day, he's lounging by a cozy fire, and it suddenly dawns on him he's actually living the dream of being an adventurer who helps folks out. But let's be real, his skills aren't exactly winning him any awards, so he keeps grinding away at odd jobs around town. One day, he decides to lend a hand to an elderly lady with her gross drains. Then, he scores a gig at a construction site, and after clocking out, he notices a mysterious glow coming from a cave, along with some desperate cries for help. Noor dashes toward the cave like a caffeinated squirrel and stumbles upon a minotaur ready to turn a girl into a pancake. She's got some knights trying to save her, but they're about as effective as wet tissue paper against that hulking beast. The minotaur swats the knight captain like a fly, then goes on a rampage, squishing the others like they're nothing. Blood's everywhere, and the girl looks like she's just seen a ghost. The minotaur locks eyes on her, but Noor, in a moment of sheer brilliance, hurls a rock to grab the beast's attention. The minotaur takes off after him, lunging like it's auditioning for a horror movie, but Noor manages to dodge its attack like a pro. The minotaur keeps charging, and Noor is parrying like he's in a dance-off, but his sword is taking a serious beating. He knows he needs to find a weak spot, but let's face it, he's not exactly packing the skills to take down a minotaur, even if he does find one. He glances back at the girl, and when the minotaur goes for her again, he activates his feather step skill and zooms in to save her, totally wrecking his sword in the process. He thinks, even if he's not the top-tier adventurer, he's got to be the hero for the girl right in front of him. He remembers his dad's wise words about what it really means to be an adventurer. The minotaur swings again, but Noor parries like a champ. This time, the minotaur's axe slips from its grip, and kaboom! The axe takes off the monster's head. Noor realizes if the fight had dragged on any longer, he'd be pushing daisies, so it hits him again just how much talent he lacks. The girl gives a big ol' thank you for saving her life and asks for his name, but Noor just shrugs and says he's not worth remembering before bouncing off like a rubber ball. Then, a bunch of knights show up to rescue her, and we find Noor back in town, shaking his head in disbelief that he almost got squished by a rogue cow wandering the streets. He's now on a mission to train like a maniac. Fast forward a bit, and a cleanup crew arrives to haul away the minotaurs behind, along with all the unfortunate souls who tried to take it on. Princess Lin is feeling super guilty about the whole mess. Just then, her knight, In, comes sprinting up, apologizing for not being her shadow when she dove into that dungeon of doom. In's job is to protect Lin, but Lin reassures her it's not her fault. This was just a basic trial for the throne, so it wouldn't make sense to drag her knight along for the ride. Suddenly, another knight pops in to tell Lin they're heading back to the castle, because Lord Reen wants to have a little chat, and she could already guess what that's about. Back at the castle, Lord Reen is scratching his head after talking to Lin, trying to piece together the chaos, but it's all a jumbled mess. The only way a minotaur could crash that dungeon party is if someone summoned it with magic, and the knight nods in agreement. They suspect the whole fiasco is linked to a merchant found dead at the scene, clutching a ring. Upon investigation, they discover the magic stone in the ring is so pure it's practically glowing, something you don't just find at your local magic shop. A minotaur is no joke, it's an 11th demon. So there's no way some random rich guy could just waltz in and buy a magic stone that can control one. So, the fancy crest on the ring is like a neon sign saying it hails from the magical empire of Doritos. Rien's convinced those Doritos folks are up to no good, especially since they've had a long-standing grudge against him. But seriously, trying to take Lin out and leaving the evidence lying around. It's like they're waving a big come at us, bro flag, hoping Rien will kick off a war so they can waltz into the dungeon like they own the place. And let's not forget about the mysterious guide who swooped in to save Lin. Reports say this guy took down a minotaur faster than you can say broken sword, and when the castle spies tried to follow him, poof, he vanished like a magician at a bad party. Rien's mind is blown, and he's itching to uncover the identity of this elusive warrior. Meanwhile, Noor just strolled back into the guild, and the guild master looks like he's seen a ghost because he thought Noor had met his end. There was a demon sighting near the construction site where Noor was working, so naturally, the guild master assumed Noor was toast. Noor, feeling a bit guilty, explains he had some shady characters on his tail last night, so he ditched them and went home without a word. The guildmaster tells him he's lucky to be alive since a minotaur is a D-demon, tough enough to turn even an rank adventurer into a pancake. Noor, blissfully unaware that the guildmaster is talking about the very creature he just took down, asks what happened to that demon. The guildmaster casually mentions some mysterious dude took care of it. Noor, still not connecting the dots, just dives into reporting the jobs he completed today. The guild master hands over his payment but reminds Noor he'd make more cash with a regular job. But Noor, he couldn't care less about the money. As long as he gets to be an adventurer, he's living the dream. Just then, Lin sneaks in like a ninja. So Lin tiptoes up behind Noor, like a ninja in a comedy sketch, and exclaims how thrilled she is to finally track him down. She sheepishly apologizes for barging in on his personal bubble, but she just had to see him again, so she whipped out her long-distance detection skills like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Noor, thinking she must be a sneaky thief with those skills, is surprised when Lin reveals she's actually a magician with a smorgasbord of basic skills from all sorts of classes. Meanwhile, the guild master and the rest of the guild start to recognize Lin, prompting her to suggest a chat outside. But before they can make their grand exit, the guild master grabs Noor like a kid snatching candy and demands to know what he did to catch Lin's attention. Noor insists he's as innocent as a puppy, meaning he's not in any trouble, so the guild master reluctantly lets him go with Lin, warning him not to pull any shenanigans outside. Lin then uses one of her skills to cloak them both, making them invisible like a pair of sneaky ghosts. Once they find a cozy little hideaway, Lin apologizes again for crashing his party, knowing a guy with his powers probably has a lot on his plate, like a buffet of responsibilities. Noor brushes it off, and Lin starts showering him with gratitude, thanking him for saving her life and a whole bunch of other folks in the nation. Noor, however, is thinking he should get a medal for taking down a cow, and he's pretty sure Lin could have handled it herself if he hadn't swooped in like a superhero. He's got no idea how he came to that conclusion after witnessing that same cow turn knights into pancake batter. Lin tries to hammer it into his head that she'd be 6 feet under if it weren't for him, but Noor still thinks he didn't do much. He graciously accepts her thanks, but then Lin brings up a reward to show her appreciation. Noor, with the seriousness of a cat avoiding a bath, tells her a simple thank you is more than enough, and she doesn't need to give him anything else. But Lin, determined as a dog with a bone, insists on rewarding him, and now her dad wants to meet him too. Noor, however, is dead set against any kind of reward, like a kid refusing to eat their vegetables. Lin gives it one last shot to convince Noor, but he's as stubborn as a mule in a mud pit with his no reward rule. Desperation kicks in for Lin as she pleads for any way to win him over, even offering him his own little kingdom. But Noor, nah, he's not interested in any of that royal nonsense. Lin, feeling like a soap opera star, starts crying and insists he must accept her gratitude, declaring she's not budging until he takes something from her. Noor suddenly remembers a time he pulled a similar stunt, and not wanting Lin to turn into a permanent fixture on his doorstep, he reluctantly agrees to meet her old man. But gifts. No thanks, he's not into that fancy stuff. Lin, over the moon, tells him to stick close because she's got some sneaky skills to keep them under the radar. Eventually, Noor finds himself at Lin's mansion, and as they walk in, she asks for his name, which he happily shares. But Noor is still in the dark about who Lin is, so she apologizes for the rudeness and introduces herself as Lindbergh Clays. But that name is a mouthful, so she just goes with Lin. Once Noor lays eyes on the house, it clicks why Lin wasn't joking about her wealth. No wonder the guild master was sweating like a turkey on Thanksgiving. As they wander around, they bump into Inn, and Lin lights up like a Christmas tree, sprinting over to ask where her old man is hiding. Inn informs her that he's currently tied up in a meeting with Rien, so he's a bit preoccupied. But aside from that, she's got her eyes on the mysterious guy lurking over there. Lin chimes in, saying that Noor is the hero who pulled her back from the brink, so she'll take them to meet her old man instead. Noor, clueless about the whole royal night gig, figures In must be a DIY knight, one of those folks who just can't resist strapping on armor for fun. He also senses that In isn't exactly rolling out the welcome mat for him, but he's scratching his head trying to figure out why. As they stroll along, they bump into a dude lounging by the window. The moment he spots them, he jumps up and demands to know what's going on and who the heck this random guy is. In tells Gilbert to chill and put his spear down because Noor is Lin's guest, and it's not exactly polite to aim weapons at visitors. Gilbert quickly realizes Noor is the lifesaver, so he eases up on the weapon. In invites him to join the party because she could use all the backup she can get. Gilbert's got a bad feeling about Noor, and Noor's thinking things are looking pretty grim for him, but he keeps on strutting along. In the throne room, the king is in the middle of a meeting with Reen, and he's fuming because it's obvious Doritas is throwing the peace treaty out the window. Reen has been bracing for this ever since the last showdown with the king of Doritas, who boldly demanded they hand over the dungeon rights. Naturally, that demand was tossed out like yesterday's leftovers, but ever since, the king of Doritas has been scheming their downfall. Just then, Lin and the gang burst into the throne room, and Lin, all pumped up, rushes over to greet her brother and dad. In and Gilbert kneel to show some royal respect, but Noor just keeps strutting by like he's on a catwalk. Reen spots Lin's sneaky cloak, realizing she must have pulled a fast one and snuck out without a hall pass, but she insists she had no other way to track down the guy who saved her. The king suddenly realizes that Noor is the one being talked about, and Noor, looking like he just rolled out of bed, apologizes for his messy appearance. But Lin is all about urgency, insisting they get here ASAP. The king, not exactly a high society type, admits he's clueless about fancy etiquette, so he might accidentally drop a rude comment or two. But the king reassures him that it's all chill because speaking freely is way easier than worrying about all that stuffy protocol. He reaches out to Noor, giving him a formal thank you for saving Lin's life. Noor, brushing it off like it's no big deal, says a simple thanks is more than enough. But the king isn't letting Noor off the hook that easily. He insists Noor can ask for any amount of cash or land he desires. Noor, however, is still not interested. The king, looking a bit shocked, ups the ante by offering half of all the treasure they snagged from the dungeon. Reen thinks that's way too generous for just one guy, but Noor still isn't biting. The king, scratching his head, decides to grab the sword hanging on his throne as a gift for Noor. Reen thinks that's a terrible idea, but the king shrugs it off, saying he never uses it anymore and nobody will notice if he swaps it for a fake. He hands it to Noor, and the moment Noor grips it, he realizes it's heavier than a sack of potatoes. Reen's eyes widen, and Noor knows that sword is worth a fortune, but the king insists it's just an old relic from his adventuring days, so it's totally cool for Noor to take it. Noor finally agrees, and the king asks him to give it a test swing. Noor obliges, swinging the sword through the air with such force that it leaves everyone gasping. The king is all impressed, but he's got a little request of his own too. So, Noor's got this grand idea that he wants to turn Lin into the next big adventurer, but Noor's all like, nah, I can't teach someone as awesome as Lin anything. He thinks Lin should be the captain of her own adventure ship. Anyway, just as Noor decides it's time to skedaddle, he has a light bulb moment about his sword. Turns out, it's the perfect size for those gutters he usually cleans. Talk about a multitasking weapon. He's planning to give it a whirl tomorrow morning. But before he can make his grand exit, In rolls up like a storm cloud and wants to have a little heart-to-heart. First off, she's super sorry for being a total grouch earlier, but Noor's like, no worries. I'm not made of sugar. She's got a job to protect the Clay family, and she's beyond thankful to Noor for saving Lin's bacon. To show her gratitude, she promises to be his superhero sidekick if he ever needs a hand. Noor's not in the mood for a back and forth, so he just nods and says he'll call her if he's ever in a pickle. On a side note, In gives him a heads up that he better not get too chummy with the king again. Because while the king might let it slide this time, she's not about to let that royal rudeness happen again. Noor's like, got it, and In's in a good mood, so she asks for his name. When he tells her it's Noor, her jaw drops like she just saw a cat wearing a top hat. Noor's all, did I mess up again? But In just waves it off and bounces. Just as Noor's about to make his escape, Gilbert shows up, ready to throw down and challenge him to a duel. Gilbert is leading Noor down a hallway, and Noor is scratching his head, wondering if they're headed to the snack bar because he just wants to get back to work. But surprise, surprise. Gilbert whisks him away to a training arena for a mock duel. Noor's jaw drops. He hasn't sparred with anyone since he was a wee lad in training school. Gilbert grabs a wooden pole like he's about to audition for a role in a medieval movie and brags about being a big deal in the capital. Then he throws Noor a curveball, asking him to pick a weapon. Noor sees this as a golden opportunity to learn from a pro, so he picks a regular wooden sword. He knows he's not going to win any gold medals here, but he's ready to give it a shot. Gilbert makes the first move, lunging at Noor with his staff, but Noor dodges like he's in a dance-off. He notices Gilbert's moves are smooth and slick, like a well-oiled machine, but for some reason it feels like Gilbert's in slow motion. Noor thinks, aha, he's just going easy on me because I'm a rookie. So he calls a timeout and tells Gilbert to stop being a softie. Gilbert, feeling challenged, cranks up the intensity, but it's still not enough to rattle Noor. Every time Gilbert swings and misses, Noor spots a gap in his defense like a hawk eyeing a mouse. Meanwhile, Gilbert's getting more frustrated than a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. He pulls out a fancy move, changing direction at the last second, trying to catch Noor off guard. He thinks he's got Noor cornered, but nope. Noor dodges again, telling Gilbert to pick up the pace because he's feeling like a cozy couch potato. That stings Gilbert's pride because he thought he was already giving it his all. Noor starts to think he might actually be stronger than Gilbert, but just when he's feeling cocky, the elite guard whips out a special move aimed right at him. The attack zooms by, but when the dust settles, there's Noor standing coolly next to Gilbert, having dodged that attack like a pro. After witnessing the chaos from Gilbert's rampage, Noor decides he's officially out of the fight club. He struts back to the palace, leaving the other knights buzzing like bees at a picnic. They can't wrap their heads around how he dodged their captain's signature move. Some are convinced Noor only made it out because Gilbert was wielding a practice spear, like come on, who fights with a rubber chicken. Others think a brainiac like Noor could take down anyone, anytime. Those thoughts send Noor spiraling down memory lane. Dune was the spear-wielding prodigy, zipping around the kingdom, taking down tough cookies left and right. No one could even come close to his level, which made him as bored as a cat in a dog park. So he rolls into the capital, joining the knights, hoping to find some monsters to tussle with since they're supposed to be tougher than humans. But even the monsters are like paper tigers to him, and boredom is gnawing at him like a hungry raccoon. Then, one day, while he's lounging like a king on a throne of pillows, the master of the sword school drops by. This guy trained Gilbert back in the day and is basically the Yoda of spears. Gilbert goes off about how being super strong is a total snooze fest and wishes there were more folks like the master to spice things up. The master just smirks and says one day a student will outshine him, and Gilbert hopes that happens while he's still kicking because that might just be the antidote to his boredom. As Gilbert ponders the legend of the guy who knocked out a minotaur with a single punch, his thoughts are doing the cha-cha all over the place. Sure, he always knew Noor was a quirky fellow, but he never expected him to pack such a punch. When they finally sparred, it was like discovering that the quiet kid in class is actually a ninja. Noor casually suggests Gilbert step it up a notch, and our hero unleashes his secret move faster than a cat on a hot tin roof, fully aware that no mere mortal could withstand it. But lo and behold, Noor sidesteps the attack like he's dodging a bad date, leaving Gilbert feeling like he just lost a game of rock, paper, scissors to a rock. To add insult to injury, Noor decides to call it a day right then and there. Gilbert, convinced that Noor is just trying to save him from a facepalm moment in front of the troops, can't help but feel a mix of admiration and defeat. As Noor bounces off, he casually mentions looking forward to their next sparring session, which is basically code for get your act together, buddy. Gilbert thinks he's finally found a partner who can spice up his otherwise mundane life, while Noor is blissfully unaware of the high praise he's receiving. In reality, he had just used his body strengthening and feather step skills to dodge Gilbert's ultimate attack at the last second. If he had been a millisecond late, he'd be a pancake. The next day, Noor is busy scrubbing drains with the epic sword gifted by the king, and let me tell you, that sword is performing like a rock star at a sold-out concert. With his construction gig on hold after the whole Minotaur fiasco, he finds himself lounging in the forest, contemplating how to kill time and put that massive sword to good use. He considers turning it into a paddle for a lake party, a pizza shovel for the ultimate slice, or even a grill plate for some backyard barbecues. But alas, his entrepreneurial dreams are dashed by a lack of resources, and his fire magic is about as effective as a wet noodle for starting a barbecue. Just when he's about to give up, he hears footsteps creeping up behind him and turns to find Lin, who's clearly on a mission to track him down. Noor is minding his own business when Lin pops up, asking how she can be of service. She's all in for being his apprentice, ready to do his bidding like a loyal sidekick. But Noor, with the enthusiasm of a cat avoiding a bath, quickly shuts that down. He tells her he's got everything under control and doesn't need a sidekick. Lin, undeterred, tries to bribe him with cash for some training, but Noor's like, nah, I'm good. She keeps insisting she can be super helpful. But Noor's brain is doing backflips trying to get through to her. So Lin decides to put on a magic show. She conjures icicle lances and hurls them at herself, then zaps them with fire like a pyromaniac on a winter day. Next, she whips out a tiny dagger and takes down a giant tree like she's auditioning for a lumberjack reality show. Then, she pulls off a magic sword move that sends a tree behind Noor into splinters. She's convinced this will win her a spot as his apprentice, but Noor is still not impressed. He realizes she's giving him way too much credit and wonders how to explain that he's not even in the same league. So he decides to show off his own skills by conjuring a tiny fireball. Lin's jaw drops when she sees it. She strolls home, pondering the legend of the talentless boy that teachers used to warn about. She always thought it was just a spooky story, never believing a 12-year-old could survive the grueling training from all 6 schools. But then, the most powerful magician at the magic school shows her his tiny fire trick and cranks it up to 11, leaving her mind blown. That magician tells her it takes ages of hard work to make that little flame skill grow. So when Noor shows Lin his tiny fire today, she's left with her jaw on the floor because it's way bigger than the most legendary magician in the universe. He claims that's all he can manage, and his skills in other areas are just as modest. But Lin knows that this little flame is like a neon sign flashing master in Noor's direction, and she suspects he's a total wizard in other skills too. Now she's feeling super embarrassed because she was strutting around like a peacock with her new high-level skills. She realizes that even though Noor could probably bench press a mountain, he never brags about it. The guy even does the dishes and takes out the trash like a champ. She thinks Noor's brain and heart are as tough as his muscles, and nothing seems to rattle him. As the future queen, she knows she's got to be strong alongside her brother, so she decides she wants to learn from Noor. She catches him just as he's leaving a restaurant, probably still dreaming about his meal. Lin admits she was acting like a total diva, and now she's even more pumped to learn from him. She believes his strength will be the secret sauce for their kingdom's happiness, so she's ready to call him her master. But Noor is totally freaked out by this and just wants to escape to his couch. Meanwhile, he's pondering why his dad would hand over the legendary black sword to some random guy. He remembers that when his dad was off adventuring, he dove into the labyrinth of the lost with the big shots to snag that sword. After years of dodging danger, this blade was forged from materials tougher than a dragon's toenail and mithril combined. Since no skill or trick could even leave a mark on it, it earned the title of the indestructible blade. The real mystery is how it ended up looking like it just survived a tornado. Noor thinks that's not something you just toss around like a frisbee. He thinks his dad must have sensed the gloomy vibes creeping over the land like a bad smell. He figures the old man must have put his chips on that guy, believing he could be their secret weapon against whatever nonsense is lurking around. Next, we find Noor munching on some grub at a food stand, hanging out with Lin. He checks in to see if she's cool with being out here, and she's totally chill. Noor mentions he's thinking of hitting up the guild after his snack, and she's all in, calling him master. This throws Noor for a loop, making him feel like he's wearing a crown he didn't earn. The more he tries to clear the air, the more tangled it gets. While he's chowing down, he figures she'll see he's just a regular Joe when she checks out the odd jobs he's juggling. Fast forward to him at the guild, and the guild master is doing a double take seeing him with Lin again. Quietly, he asks Noor what's cooking, and Noor replies it's a bit of a mess. The guild master picks up on Noor's reluctance to spill the beans, so he dances around the subject, but Noor insists they need to hash it out since even he's lost in the sauce. The guild master brushes it off, thinking Noor is just there for a gig, and Noor asks for something for a duo. The guild master explains that since Lin's a B-ranked adventurer, they could tackle a goblin hunt quest outside town if they teamed up. Noor is pumped to hear this, remembering that goblins are like practice dummies for adventurers. He's flabbergasted he can take on a job like that, feeling like a kid on Christmas morning, but he wonders if it's cool to ride on Lin's coattails like this. He feels a bit selfish asking her to join him, especially after telling her to scram before and not even knowing if she'd want to team up with a weakling like him. Lin asks if everything's alright, and Noor wonders if she's okay with him leaning on her rank. Lin's totally game, saying he can use whatever she's got. Noor still feels a twinge of guilt relying on a young girl like her, but he's stoked to finally chase one of his dreams, so he gears up to head out and hunt those goblins down. The guildmaster gives Noor a friendly nudge, reminding him that he didn't even spill the beans on where the goblins are hiding, so he swings back like a boomerang. With a nod of approval, the guildmaster greenlights their mission, warning Noor to keep his wits about him, because goblins may be pint-sized, but they're not exactly the friendly neighborhood mascots. Noor gives a thumbs up, and the guildmaster points them toward the goblin hangout. He tells them to count their kills on the way back and to snag those ears as proof, or else they'll be leaving empty-handed, no pay, no party. Lin spots the goblins lounging in the forest of beasts, and the guild master mentions they've been playing hide-and-seek lately, so if they come up empty, they can always grab some herbs instead. They get the memo and set off on their adventure. Fast forward to the city gates, where they flash their papers to the guards, who give them the thumbs up to escape the city. They then plunge into the forest of beasts, and Noor realizes this place is nothing like the cozy Southwoods he knows. He thinks the trees look like they've been hitting the gym, and Lin chimes in, explaining that the whole ecosystem is on a different level. Curious, Noor asks about the goblins, and she spills the tea they mostly snack on fruits and critters but aren't shy about throwing down if provoked. They breed like rabbits, and when hunger strikes they raid human territory. That's why the capital sends adventurers to keep their numbers in check, but since the forest is their turf, they can't just wipe them out. Lin drops some knowledge bombs about rare plants and critters in the area, making it a goldmine for newbies looking to cash in. Noor gets it, and Lin feels like she nailed the lesson, thinking he was testing her. Noor realizes Lin's got brains to match her brawn, and he feels like he's got a lot to learn from her too. They trudge deeper into the forest, where a light fog wraps around them like a cozy blanket. Lin decides to flex her detection skills to sniff out some goblins, but it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack if the haystack was also a goblin-free zone. This lack of goblin action makes her wonder if the rumors about their dwindling numbers are actually true. Just when she thinks it's safe to relax, she senses something lurking deeper in the woods. With a gleam in her eye, she suggests they investigate, and off they go, plunging further into the increasingly dark and tangled underbrush. Lin gives Noor a crash course on goblin habitats, explaining that this is their prime real estate. Suddenly, her face goes pale, and Noor asks what's up. She reveals that whatever she sensed was right in front of them, but now it's pulled a Houdini. Noor, ever the optimist, speculates it might have been a sick monster that just decided to take a nap, and Lin nods, thinking that's a solid theory, but they're still going to check it out. They scour the ground for clues, but Noor's eagle eyes catch a goblin corpse just chilling in midair. Lin feels a shiver of danger and casts her uncover spell, and lo and behold, they've stumbled upon a colossal hidden goblin emperor. Lin tries to ensnare the beast with some ivy magic, but before she can even say goblin stew, Noor leaps in, thinking it's just another goblin. He's flabbergasted by its size, wondering how this hulking green giant is considered weak when it's glaring at him like it just lost a game of poker. He can't wrap his head around how adventurers treat these guys like they're just appetizers. Noticing Lin's shaky hands, he figures she's still a rookie in the combat arena, despite her fancy skills, and hey, who wouldn't be a little jittery facing a giant green glare? Lin is fully aware that they're up against a goblin emperor, which is basically the goblin version of a royal pain in the neck. She explains that these little green guys are the result of some mad scientist's late-night experiments gone wrong. This particular goblin has a taste for its own kind, gobbling them up to boost its magical powers. Noor, on the other hand, is blissfully ignorant, telling Lin not to trip over a mere goblin. She starts to wonder if Noor had some sort of premonition about this, and that's why he decided to tag along, especially after his weird face when goblins were brought up. Then Noor, in a burst of bravery, suggests they team up to take down this oversized salad tosser. Lin is totally on board, and they get ready for the epic showdown. The monster charges at them, swinging trees like it's auditioning for a lumberjack competition, but Noor is like a ninja, parrying the strikes with style. Another tree comes flying, but Noor deflects it like a pro, giving Lin the chance to unleash her wind cutter and icicle dance spells. Unfortunately, the goblin is quicker than a caffeinated squirrel, dodging her attacks. Noor starts to wonder if goblins are secretly Olympic sprinters. Just then, the goblin hurls a tree at Lin, but Noor leaps in like a hero in a cheesy movie, deflecting it away. More trees come flying at him, but he's like a tree-fighting machine, parrying them left and right. Lin notices the monster's wounds are healing faster than a toddler's scraped knee. She's shocked at how quickly the goblin emperor bounces back. Spotting a shiny mana stone on its forehead, she realizes that's the secret to its speedy recovery. Lin tells Noor to go for the stone, but the goblin retaliates by launching a tree barrage. Noor can't block them all, so Lin steps in with a wind blast, sending the trees back at the monster. It gets hurt, but surprise, surprise, it heals up faster than a pizza disappears at a party. Noor realizes they can't keep this up and doubts they can take out the stone, even with Lin's magic. With a spark of genius, Noor asks Lin to channel her wind blast at his back. Lin hesitates, worried she might turn him into a pancake, but Noor reassures her that she'll be aiming for his sword, not him. In a race against a monster that could probably win a marathon, Lin decides to give Noor a turbo boost by casting a wind blast on his sword. Noor, feeling like a rocket, realizes he's going way too fast and combines his physical enhancements with a feather step, trying to defy the laws of physics. Spoiler alert, he breaks a bone, but like a true magician, he quickly heals it with some low-level magic. With a heroic leap, he smacks the monster right on its forehead, sending a crystal flying out like a bad pinata. The monster howls in pain, and Lin rushes over to check on Noor, who insists he's fine and tells her to finish the job. Noor suggests a gentle takedown, but Lin decides to go full-on barbecue with a hell flare, roasting the monster alive. Noor, feeling a bit guilty, prays for the poor creature's soul after witnessing its fiery demise. Realizing he might need a break from goblin hunting, he thinks it's time to stick to his usual shenanigans and level up before tackling anything that's scary again. Meanwhile, Reen discovers the Goblin Emperor and inspects the massive mana stone they snagged from the monster, realizing it's way bigger than a Goblin King. He suspects it's linked to the Magic Empire and learns it's actually the demon's heart from the holy theocracy of Mithra. He wonders how his sister is faring, and the Shadow Company reassures him she's only got a few scratches. Reen is impressed they managed to take down the beast with minimal injuries. The Shadow Company reveals the monster was hiding with a high-level concealment spell for a couple of days, and Reen starts to sweat, realizing even they missed it. He wonders how something that enormous slipped past their defenses, and if there were any warning signs at all. So it turns out goblin shenanigans have been on the decline in the area, and our hero suspects they might be taking a vacation elsewhere too. The Shadowy Company hands him a report filled with bizarre incidents from the last 3 months, and he tells them to keep digging like they're on a treasure hunt. Lin and Noor waltz back to the Guildmaster to spill the beans on their adventure. The Guildmaster nearly drops his coffee when he hears Noor took down a goblin. Noor, feeling like a champ, admits it was a tough tussle but gives all the glory to Lin, who insists Noor did the heavy lifting like a goblin slaying Hercules. Noor is buzzing with excitement, claiming it was a monumental day since it was his first hunt. The Guildmaster, eavesdropping like a nosy neighbor, assumes Noor was just a spectator while Lin did all the cool stuff, thinking it was a smart move considering Noor's delicate strength. Noor nods, mentioning he didn't expect goblins to be so. Goblin Y, he points out the shiny gem on the goblin's forehead was its Achilles heel, leaving the Guildmaster flabbergasted. He starts pondering if they really faced a goblin at all, considering Noor's Mana Stone knowledge about hearts and throats. Noor looks to Lin for backup, and she confirms it was indeed a goblin, much to the guildmaster's surprise. He speculates it might have been a rare breed, wondering if they kept an ear as a trophy. Noor suddenly remembers they totally forgot that detail because they accidentally roasted the little guy. Meanwhile, Reen starts getting reports of some seriously weird happenings in nearby towns. People are hearing strange noises at night, and animals are returning from the woods looking like they just watched a horror movie. In other places, pets are vanishing like they've been abducted by aliens, and the forests have gone all creepy quiet. Reen thinks this might be a sign that some unnatural monsters have snuck into their kingdom, so he jumps into action, ordering his crew to send out search parties and get everyone with detection spells on the case, because who doesn't love a good monster hunt? Reen decides it's time to call in the big guns, summoning the 6 masters from each school because, when you're dealing with dungeons, it's always good to have a backup plan. Once his crew bounces, Reen goes a little bonkers, flinging papers like confetti and pondering if the Magic Empire is so obsessed with their dungeons that they'd go to such ridiculous lengths. Meanwhile, Noor and Lin are living their best lives, munching on street food like royalty with their reward cash. The guildmaster, in a fit of generosity, handed them some dough for taking down a goblin, no proof needed, just because it was Noor's rookie mission. After their feast, Lin announces she's heading home, and Noor is thrilled to finally have some peace and quiet. But just then, Reen pops up on a quest for his sister. Spotting Noor, he immediately ropes him into a trip to a mountain town the next morning, promising Lin will tag along and that he'll pay him handsomely. He keeps the details of his mysterious business under wraps, but Noor, feeling adventurous, gives a thumbs up. The next day, Noor hops into a carriage for the first time, soaking in the experience like a sponge. It's the main reason he took Reen's quest. But Lin looks like she just lost her favorite pet rock when he asks if she's not enjoying the stunning views. Noor, however, is lost in daydreams of becoming a legendary adventurer and escaping the city. Suddenly, Lin apologizes for her brother dragging him into this mess, but Noor reassures her it's all good because, hey, he's getting paid. This revelation only makes Lin look even more bummed out. This morning, Reen laid out the grand plan. They were off to the town of Taros, which was conveniently located on the other side of a mountain. If things stayed as quiet as a library during finals week, they'd then hop over to the Holy Kingdom of Mithra for a little vacation, paid of course. Reen told Noor to kick back and relax, as long as the universe didn't throw any curveballs. Lin, meanwhile, was crossing her fingers for a peaceful trip, and her bodyguard In was there to reassure her, claiming she had nothing to fret about because she was on duty. But here's the kicker: Reen had secretly tasked In with a mission that could make a soap opera look like a documentary. He warned her that their kingdom was about to face a colossal threat, and if things went south, In was to whisk Lin away to Mithra. In's jaw dropped. Did Lin know about this? No. Reen had kept it under wraps, fearing Lin would throw a fit. He was sweating bullets over her safety and trusted In more than a cat trusts a sunny windowsill. Fast forward to the present, and the crew is taking a breather. In feels a bit guilty for dragging Noor into this mess and promises to keep him safe. Noor, ever the optimist, insists he's got a PhD in running away. In, however, is all about that shield life and reassures him that there's no need to bolt because she's got her trusty shield. Noor squints, claiming he can't see anything, so In decides to put on a little show. She conjures up a holy shield that sparkles like a disco ball and tells Noor to hide behind it if the sky starts falling. He's totally impressed and recalls how Lin once said In was as fierce as Gilbert, the spear-wielding warrior he had a run-in with. So rumor has it that Gilbert could take down a dragon with a sneeze, and if In is anywhere near that level, Noor is starting to feel like a soggy piece of bread compared to them. He can barely handle a goblin without breaking a sweat. He gives In a big ol' thank you, calling her super talented. But that jogs her memory back to her childhood days in the orphanage. One fateful day, she accidentally unleashed her powers, and when her curious friend tried to poke it, she ended up with a finger that looked like it had a run-in with a blender. Cue the dramatic entrance of the caretakers, the principal, and a whole squad of magical heavyweights, including a fiery-haired warrior and a priest, all ready for a showdown at the orphanage. They asked In to show off her skills, and the magician declared her powers a divine gift, like winning the lottery but with more sparkles. He told her she could wield a blade that slices through anything or a shield that could block a meteor, depending on her mood. Talk about pressure. But the redhead warrior stepped in, promising to train her to harness her powers without turning her friends into confetti. As she trained, In kept her distance from the other kids, terrified of turning them into a game of dodgeball gone wrong. Then she met Noor, and suddenly that name was everywhere, like a catchy pop song stuck in her head, thanks to her warrior dad. One day, while they were out monster hunting, another warrior burst in with news of a monster stampede. The redhead warrior, lost in thought, muttered how he wished Noah was around for backup. In's curiosity about this Noah guy was piqued, but so was her jealousy. Ever since Noor entered her life, that green-eyed monster had been doing the cha-cha in her heart, and she was determined to shake it off so she could protect Lin without any emotional baggage. Just then, Noor spotted something shimmying through the wheat fields, leaving behind a trail that looked like a toddler's finger painting. As soon as Lin caught wind of this, she yelled for the carriage to hit the brakes. With a flick of her wrist, she unleashed her magic to unveil whatever was lurking in the field, and lo and behold, it was a gigantic frog-bat hybrid monster. Meanwhile, chaos erupted as a horde of monsters decided to throw a surprise party for the capital. Reen, channeling his inner drill sergeant, rallied the warriors, swordsmen, and hunters to go monster hunting, while the thieves were tasked with playing the role of the Good Samaritans, helping civilians escape. King Clays recalled Emperor Duras's ominous words about regretting their choices, and he couldn't shake the feeling that Duras was pulling the strings behind this monster mash. Reen nodded in agreement, sensing this was just the opening act of a much bigger show. Clays inquired about the 6 masters, and Reen informed him they were all busy battling the monstrous menace. The red-haired warrior and his crew were busy tangoing with 3 goblin emperors in the woods, the sword master was busy slicing lizard monsters in the city, and the hunters, magicians, healers, and thieves were all in on the action too. The king couldn't help but worry they were spreading themselves thinner than butter on toast. Meanwhile, just as Lin peeled back the concealment spell on the black dragon, it decided to play peek-a-boo and attack the girl standing right in front of it. Lin and In recognized this beast. It was the Black Death Dragon, a real party crasher. Nor, without a second thought, charged in to save the girl, parrying the dragon's strikes with his black blade like a pro. In noticed the girl appeared out of thin air just as Lin broke the spell. Lin had a lightbulb moment. This girl must be a demon with monster-controlling powers. Her brother had once spun tales about demons who looked like humans but were more like furry little nightmares. He warned her that demons were a nasty bunch, having wiped out an entire kingdom once and humans had hunted them down, leaving their descendants with a grudge deeper than a bottomless pit. So In's back in the present, and she's convinced that the girl is a demon who summoned the dragon to the city. When Lin whipped out her spell, it totally caught the girl off guard, and for just a split second, the dragon went rogue and decided to take a bite out of her. In's thinking, why save someone like that? But Noor, bless his heart, rushes in like a knight in slightly tarnished armor. As he battles the dragon, In's scratching her head, wondering what on earth he's thinking. Lin pipes up saying they need to help Noor, but In's like, nah, it's too late for him. Noor, feeling all brave, thinks the dragon's a slowpoke compared to that goblin he just squashed, and if he can just stall for a bit, Lin will swoop in like a superhero. But then, out of nowhere, the dragon lets loose a breath attack, and Noor decides to play the hero by trying to block it, thinking, if I dodge, the girl's toast. Spoiler alert, that was a terrible idea. The attack goes boom, and suddenly there's a cloud of super nasty poison in the air. Noor starts spewing black blood like a broken fountain, and bloody tears are streaming down his face. He realizes he's just been hit with the kind of poison that would make even a cockroach reconsider its life choices, and it's too late because he's fading faster than a bad magic trick. He hits the ground, and Lin tries to rush to him, but In throws up a barrier like a bouncer at a club, saying, "You go near the Black Death Dragon, and you'll be the next appetizer." She stacks her shields like a game of Jenga, hoping to keep Lin safe until she can make a getaway. Lin's begging to help Noor, but In's like, "Sorry, princess, but my main gig is keeping you alive." Just then, the dragon decides to unleash another round of poison breath, and In's piling on more shields like she's preparing for a snowstorm. She tells the princess to focus on not becoming Dragon Chow, but Lin, being the stubborn hero, uses her purification magic, hoping to save Noor. Her magic is strong enough to make the black poison look like a bad hair day. Lin apologizes to Noor, saying she couldn't save him, and just when it seems all hope is lost, a part of the dragon's claw smashed into her barrier, and the poison cloud disappeared. Noor is still duking it out with the dragon, even though he's been hit with enough poison to make a snake jealous. Watching him struggle, In suddenly gets why the fiery-haired warrior always calls for Noor when the going gets tough. She thinks of him as the ultimate human shield, always jumping in front of danger like a superhero with a death wish. But deep down, she's pretty sure he's not walking away from this one. Meanwhile, Noor is busy deflecting the dragon's fiery breath and swatting away its claws like a fly, but he's leaving himself wide open for a smackdown. He manages to block one attack, but that's about it before he crumples like a cheap lawn chair. He touches his face, sees the poison oozing out, and thinks, hey, maybe I can pull off a miracle this time. Then, we get a peek into the sad saga of the Demon Kinkin. Starting from the moment he and his fellow cursed kiddos were booted from society. They were shunned for their monster taming skills, tossed into cages like they were the latest zoo attraction. They were fed scraps that even raccoons would turn their noses up at. What was once a harmless talent for managing livestock turned into a weapon of mass destruction when some bright spark decided to use it for battle. From that moment on, everyone was terrified of them. In that hellish prison, the kid took daily beatings for no good reason. Whenever he had the audacity to ask why he was being treated like a pinata, they'd just hit him harder, turning him into a walking bruise. And as if that wasn't enough fun, they'd starve him for 3 days straight. He quickly figured out that keeping his mouth shut was the best way to avoid more pain, but the nightmare didn't end there. They showcased him like a circus attraction, putting him on display for the townsfolk to spit, throw things, and hurl insults, treating him like the boogeyman under their beds. For Demon Kin, this was already a rough gig, but for him it was a nightmare because he had the delightful ability to read minds. He could hear every nasty, hateful thought they had about him all at once, like a really bad radio station stuck on the worst channel. And when the townspeople found out he could read their minds, their hatred cranked up to 11, and the violence escalated faster than a cat on a hot tin roof. But here's the kicker: revenge never even crossed his mind. Sure, he loathed his miserable life, but the thought of hurting others made him feel queasier than a roller coaster ride after a chili cheese dog. Then one fateful day, his captor presented him with a twisted deal: control 2 monsters and send them to wreak havoc on a neighboring kingdom. In return, his daily beatings would be reduced to a mere weekly occurrence, and he'd even get some bread that wasn't a science experiment gone wrong. But if he said no, things would get worse, if you can believe that. Desperate times called for desperate measures, so the boy tried to read his captor's mind to uncover his true motives. But the guy was sporting a magical gadget that blocked his powers like a bouncer at a club. With no other options and fear gnawing at him like a hungry raccoon, he reluctantly agreed to the deal, determined to survive and protect his fellow demon kin. So he sealed himself up, knowing he'd have to unleash those monsters on the kingdom, but just as he was about to pull it off, the barrier around him shattered, and he lost focus for a split second. That was all it took for the monster to break free. As he scrambled to regain control, the fraud hit him like a ton of bricks. And that's when it dawned on him he really stepped in at this time, and the other demon kin were probably in for a world of hurt because of his blunder. As much as he feels like a soggy sandwich for them, at least he's got a silver lining: he's checking out without having to play the villain. That was his ultimate no-no, causing anyone else a headache. He's just crossing his fingers that if he gets a do-over in life, he won't be treated like yesterday's leftovers. Maybe, just maybe, he could score a family that doesn't resemble a pack of wild raccoons and actually enjoy a meal that doesn't taste like cardboard. So he shuts his eyes, ready to dive into whatever the universe has in store. But just when he's about to take the plunge, Noor swoops in like a superhero to save the day. The boy is scratching his head, wondering why someone from the royal family would throw themselves into the lion's den for him. And when the frog decides to play the poison game, both Noor and the boy get a hefty serving of the toxic stew. Noor could have easily zapped himself with his basic healing magic, but instead he's all about saving the boy while battling the poison like a champ. Soon enough, Noor is down for the count, but he's got this unshakable belief that he's going to pull through. That confidence. It's rooted in a childhood memory. After his mom passed, he once went on a grand adventure into the woods to gather dinner ingredients. After a day of foraging, he returned with a bag full of herbs that looked like they were auditioning for a horror movie. He thought, what's the worst that could happen if I toss them all in a pot? Spoiler alert, it was the worst idea ever. Noor ended up bleeding out on the floor because his soup was basically a death potion. With no one around to save him, he was on the edge of the abyss. Desperate, he used his low heal ability, praying it would keep him alive just a tad longer. Miraculously, it worked, letting him survive until dawn. Once he could finally stand, he splashed some water on his face and headed to the library to figure out what culinary disaster he had just created. That's when he discovered the red herb he picked was called Dragon Ruin. His mom had even given him a stern warning about that one, like don't eat it unless you want to meet the Grim Reaper. Now he's really kicking himself for pulling off such a spectacularly dumb move. But hey, a little poison isn't going to put a damper on his training routine. Noor powers through the agony, determined to keep sweating it out, even as the poison throws a wild party in his body. Eventually, though, his body throws in the towel and he face plants into the ground like a sack of potatoes. He taps into his low heal ability, and to his shock, after a little blackout nap, he wakes up feeling like $1,000,000. His stomach's no longer staging a protest, but now he's hungrier than a bear in a honey factory. So off he goes into the woods, tiptoeing around the dragon ruin plants like they're landmines. While he's busy inspecting a different plant, out of nowhere, a poison spike snake decides his backside looks like a buffet and bites him right there. Noor, not one to take a snake bite lying down, gives the snake a good old-fashioned smackdown. But these snakes are like the drama queens of the venom world, and soon enough, Noor is back on the ground, lights out. Now, while most folks would be pushing up daisies by now, Noor wakes up a couple of hours later, feeling like he just had a spa day. He can't believe he's still alive, and since he already took out the snake, he thinks, why not whip it up for dinner? His logic: if you can survive the bite, you can definitely survive the dinner. And guess what? He's right. The poison doesn't bother him one bit, and the snake turns out to be a culinary delight. The next day, Noor decides to take his wild theory for a spin. He hunts down another poison snake and practically begs it to bite him just to see what happens. And lo and behold, the venom creeps through his system way slower than before. Noor realizes he might just be the world's first poison-resistant superhero. Thrilled, he sets off on a mission to chow down on anything that could potentially be toxic. So, this guy has a knack for collapsing from poison overdoses more times than a cat has lives, but instead of calling it quits, he just keeps shoveling more of the toxic stuff into his mouth like it's a buffet. Despite the blood he coughs up like a broken fountain, He never picked up any fancy poison skills. But guess what? He's developed a taste for the stuff. Right now, with a monster trying to turn him into a snack, all he can think about is how delicious that frog is going to be once he's done with it. The frog tries to squish him, but Noor pulls off a backflip that would make a gymnast jealous and lands like a cat on his feet. The poison is no joke, and it took a hot minute for his body to kick it to the curb, which is why he face-planted earlier. But now, he's like a walking immunity poster. As the frog lunges, Noor goes full demolition mode on its claws, and when it jumps at him, he gives its face a good ol' smack, sending its teeth flying like confetti. The frog, realizing it's in a pickle, starts charging up a massive poison blast. Noor thinks, last stand, huh? But to him, it's just a free dinner. So before the frog can unleash its toxic fury, Noor slams its mouth shut with his sword, causing a poison explosion that would make any chemist proud. Feeling like a champ, he can't help but wonder how a poisonous frog ended up in this field. Not that he's complaining, the more poison, the tastier the treat. Then he remembers there's a kid behind him, so he turns around and asks if the little dude is okay. The kid says he's fine, but Noor can see he looks like he just lost a fight with a raccoon, so he figures they'll have Lin patch him up later. Curious, Noor asks what the kid is doing out here, and the kid, not wanting to fib, admits he's the one who brought the frog. He did it because he promised someone he'd deliver a frog to the city. Noor's brain kicks into high gear, trying to decode the boy's words, and since Noor has this bizarre fascination with poisonous snacks, he instantly pictures the Black Death Dragon as just another dish on the menu. So, he jumps to the conclusion that this kid must be a frog farmer. He even deduces that the boy was hiding behind a barrier to protect his precious toxic frog meat from would-be thieves. Now, Noor is convinced he's totally botched this kid's meat delivery, so he starts apologizing like a broken record. He even offers to pay the kid back for the frog meat, even if it takes him a lifetime, but the boy brushes it off, saying it's no big deal. Noor accepts this, but he's still scratching his head, wondering how a kid like this managed to haul a giant frog all the way here. Reluctantly, the boy admits he can control monsters, which is how he pulled it off. Noor is flabbergasted, thinking the kid must have some wild talent. But the boy clarifies it's not a talent, it's just something he was born with. Then he drops the bombshell that he's demon kin. The boy expects Noor to freak out or throw a tantrum, but Noor just starts daydreaming about all the cool things he could do with that power. He imagines animals helping in the fields, sending messages with birds, and never having to worry about monsters again. He even wishes he had that ability himself. The boy, taken aback, asks Noor if he really isn't scared of him and his powers. Noor, being his usual self, doesn't see why he should be. To him, the boy's ability is like having a Swiss Army knife in a world full of butter knives. The kid is stunned to hear this and starts crying because he never thought his life could have any real meaning. Noor sees a lot of himself in the boy and can't fathom why the kid has such low self-esteem when he's got this incredible ability. So he figures there's more to the story, but he knows the boy has the potential to become someone truly epic. Noor confidently tells him that his future is as bright as a disco ball at a dance party. Just then, the rest of the crew comes barreling in like they just heard the ice cream truck. Lin is ready to whip out her healing powers faster than a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat, but Noor waves her off like a pesky fly, insisting he's as fine as a frog in a lily pad. Lin's jaw drops. How on earth could Noor be okay after getting blasted by the Black Death Dragon? That dragon's breath is like a toxic cloud of bad decisions, capable of turning even the toughest soil into mush. It's like trying to explain how a cat can land on its feet after jumping off a roof, utterly baffling. The only thing that pops into her head is a lesson from Street. So about a technique called Sacred Spirit. This fancy move takes 40 years to master, yet here's Noor pulling it off like he's just learned to ride a bike. Still a bit jittery, Noor turns to Lin and asks if she can heal his new buddy. But the kid insists he's good, thank you very much. Lin takes one look at him and her internal alarm bells start ringing, demonkin. Yikes. Noor, however, is as chill as a cucumber in a salad and suggests they let the kid hitch a ride in their carriage. Lin raises an eyebrow, thinking about all the horror stories she's heard about demonkin being more trouble than a cat in a dog park. She presses Noor, asking if he's really cool with bringing the kid along, especially since he just summoned a monster that turned the field into a disaster zone. Noor shrugs, saying it's a bummer about the field, but he feels like he owes the kid for taking out that poison frog he worked so hard to catch. So, Noor's got this kid who swears he promised someone he'd deliver a frog to this spot. But wait a minute, who's this mysterious frog-loving individual? The kid just shrugs, claiming he's totally in the dark about it because they never let him in on the secret club. And In, with her detective skills, can tell he's not just pulling a fast one. Plus, the way he's walking around like he's auditioning for a role in The Walking Wounded tells her he's probably been through some serious stuff. Sure, slavery is a no in the Kingdom of Clays, but other places, not so much. It dawns on her that this kid might have been dragged into this whole mess against his will. She asks if he remembers how to get back home, but he shakes his head like a bobblehead, saying he was blindfolded and dumped in the middle of nowhere like yesterday's trash. Lin starts to think maybe she jumped the gun on judging this kid, so she turns to In and suggests they bring Rollo along for the ride. But here's the kicker: Demonkin are about as welcome in Mithra as a porcupine at a balloon party, so sneaking Rollo in could turn them into public enemy number 1. Just as they're trying to untangle this mess, a voice pops up from behind them. They whip around to find a guy standing there, looking like he just found out his favorite show was canceled. He notices the cargo hasn't been delivered properly, and Noor asks if he's the one who placed the order. The assassin, looking all high and mighty, says he's just a higher-up and then gets nosy about what happened to the dragon. Noor sheepishly admits he's the one who caused the dragon drama, and the assassin looks puzzled, like he's trying to solve a riddle. But he quickly brushes it off, saying his only interest is in the kid Noor's got. He declares he's there to take the boy home, and Noor breathes a sigh of relief, thinking the assassin is there to pick up Rollo, not to start a dragon rescue mission. The assassin, with a grin that could curdle milk, declares that snatching Rollo would line his pockets with gold, without so much as a how do you do. He lunges at Rollo like a cat after a laser pointer. But Noor, quicker than a squirrel on espresso, blocks the attack. Confused and slightly flabbergasted, Noor asks what the assassin thinks he's doing. The assassin, with all the warmth of a snowstorm, retorts that Noor is just a pesky obstacle and demands he hand over the demon folk. And Noor, now realizing he's in a pickle, wonders if he means Rollo, but the assassin shrugs off names like they're last week's leftovers. He casually mentions that delivering Rollo's corpse would earn him a pretty penny, leaving Noor's jaw on the floor. The assassin keeps swinging like he's auditioning for a role in a bad action movie, but Noor is blocking every move like a pro goalie. Frustrated, the assassin suggests that maybe bringing Rollo alive for his employer to do the dirty work would be easier, but who has time for that? He lunges again, but Noor is there, parrying like it's a dance-off. Lin watches the chaos unfold, her brain struggling to keep up, while In insists she stay behind him like a loyal puppy. Meanwhile, the assassin is starting to think Noor is a real weirdo as he keeps dodging and blocking like he's in a video game. Growing more annoyed, the assassin decides it's time to take Noor's head off, charging in with a full power attack. Noor manages to block it, but the force sends him flying like a ragdoll. Somehow, he stops himself mid-air, scratching his head over how this guy can hit like a freight train with knives that look like they belong in a butter dish. The power behind those strikes is reminiscent of the cow he fought earlier. Talk about beefy. During the fray, one of the assassin's knives snaps, but he's quick to swap it out, leaving Noor to fend off a relentless barrage of attacks. He's barely keeping Rollo safe, relying on instincts sharper than a chef's knife, but deep down, he knows it's just a matter of time before the assassin turns him into a pancake. The assassin, clearly shocked that Noor is still standing, keeps throwing punches like a toddler in a tantrum. Meanwhile, Lin is watching from a safe distance, feeling the battle's intensity like it's a bad soap opera. In, Ever the protective buddy, throws up a barrier and tells her to back it up, because things are about to get messier than a spilled potion. As she squints at the chaos, it suddenly dawns on her there's only one guy who dresses like a walking fashion disaster. She spills the beans to the crew that the assassin is none other than Deadman Zadu, a former S-ranked adventurer with a flair for the dramatic. Her mind drifts back to that one time she crashed a meeting of the 6 sovereigns. Gilbert had grilled her about ditching her post, and she explained that she stumbled upon a mystery that was more stubborn than a cat in a bathtub, an unresolved case about a target who was supposedly 6 feet under. Dandel had told her to drop it, claiming the target was declared dead to the public while still playing hide and seek. Sig, the brainiac, quickly pieced it together that they were talking about Deadman Zadu, the once famous adventurer who, after peaking at a young age, became an S-ranked target. Gilbert perked up at this, wondering if they wanted him to take out the trash, but Sig shot him down faster than a rogue in a tavern brawl. Gilbert was flabbergasted that Zadu was strong enough to make even the 6 sovereigns sweat. Eager to dig deeper, he tried to pry into Zadu's backstory, but In cut him off, warning that Zadu was as dangerous as a dragon with a toothache. Carr chimed in, saying hunting Zadu right now was about as useful as a chocolate teapot. Noticing Gilbert's curiosity, Oaken chimed in with a fun fact: Zadu mastered ancient dwarven alchemy and snagged the title of Dragon Slayer at the tender age of 13. His fame spread like wildfire, reaching even the most remote corners of the world. Zadu had climbed to the top of the adventurer ladder, and Gilbert couldn't help but think he sounded like a character straight out of a bedtime story gone rogue. In scratched his head, pondering how someone like Zadu ended up on the S-ranked hit list. Sig chimed in, explaining that Zadu wasn't always the poster child for good behavior. He mentioned that In's findings were all laid out in the report. As In flipped through the pages, he was flabbergasted to learn that Zadu had taken out 36 members of the Serenza Trading Company. Gilbert's jaw dropped when he found out Zadu had gone on a civilian slaying spree. Sa added that because of this little incident, many in the guild were itching to yank Zadu's adventurer license. But since he had a knack for single-handedly taking down disaster-class monsters, the guild was stuck in a debate loop. Sig then spilled the beans that Zadu would accept any job, no matter how twisted, as long as the paycheck was hefty. Common sense. Nah. The history of nations. Who cares? Consequences. What are those? Sig recounted the wildest tale of Zadu wiping out an entire military like they were just pesky goblins, and then going on to play hide and seek with the royal family. Spoiler alert, they didn't win. That's when everyone realized Zadu had a moral compass that was permanently stuck on whatever. In added that a horde of adventurers had tried to take Zadu down, lured by the gigantic bounty on his head, but all they got for their trouble was a mountain of corpses and a reward that just kept getting fatter. To save face, the guild eventually declared him dead, which is why he's now affectionately known as Deadman Zadu. Zadu, in a fit of frustration, snaps yet another knife while going toe-to-toe with Noor, who's already turned most of his prized possessions into confetti. The ever-charming Noor, with a grin that could light up a dungeon, apologizes and claims it's all Zadu's fault for throwing the first punch. Zadu, brushing it off like a pesky fly, isn't mad. He's just scratching his head over how Noor is smashing through mithril or calcum and dragon tusk like they're made of butter. Zadu, baffled by Noor's oddball behavior and even odder sword, decides to put those thoughts on the back burner until he can wrap this fight up. With a dramatic flair, he tosses the cross he's been lugging around into the air, which magically splits into a bunch of shiny silver crosses. In, watching from the sidelines, thinks this looks like a weapon that could take out a small army in one go, while Zadu cheerfully tells Noor he can smash as many as he wants. He's got a whole factory of them in his back pocket. Zadu launches the crosses at Rollo, and Noor tries to block them, but he can't catch them all, so he uses his own body as a shield for Rollo. He keeps this up, and In, sensing the impending doom, realizes he can't keep this up forever. Torn between her duty to help Lin escape and her instinct to save Noor, she hesitates. But after a moment of internal debate, she turns to Lin and asks for the green light to jump in and help Noor, and Lin gives her the thumbs up. Noor is still in the thick of it, trying to swat away those pesky silver crosses like they're annoying flies at a picnic. His hands are so full he could start a juggling act, but all he can do is use his body as a shield for Rollo. Just when it looks like he might need a superhero cape, In swoops in with her shield, ready to save the day. She even tries to give Zadu a taste of his own medicine, but he's dodging like he's in a dance-off. In's got her eyes on the prize, protecting Lin at all costs, so she can't let Zadu take a dirt nap just yet. She apologizes to Noor for her dramatic entrance, and he's all gratitude for her timely rescue. In starts flinging her shields like frisbees, but Zadu is dodging them with the grace of a cat on a hot tin roof. Noor is watching in awe, thinking, wow, she's like a shield-wielding ninja, but then he realizes Zadu is slipping through her defenses like butter on a hot pancake. Furious, In tells Noor they need a new game plan. She decides to play defense while Noor takes the offensive lead. As Noor sizes up the situation, he thinks, Zadu's blades are fast, but I've seen faster birds at the park. Then he spots some toad claws lying around and gets a light bulb moment. He tells In to lower her barrier on his cue, and she's like, you got it. Noor channels his inner superhero, launching the broken claws of the silver crosses just as In drops the barrier. Boom. The plan works like a charm. Some crosses go down, and Noor is feeling like a tactical genius. With plenty of toad claw ammo left, he keeps the onslaught going, taking out more crosses like a pro. As they were making headway, Zadu suddenly decided to play peekaboo with In and launched a surprise attack. Noor, with the reflexes of a cat on a hot tin roof, parried the blow just in time, saving In from becoming a very unfortunate pancake. Zadu was left flabbergasted, especially when he noticed his adamantite knife had turned into confetti. He grumbled about needing to balance his budget and went for Noor again, but Noor, like a seasoned dodgeball champion, deflected him once more, asking Zadu to stop with the ninja moves. Zadu was still scratching his head, feeling like something was off about Noor's sword and, well, Noor himself. He pondered how Noor could see him blocking his attacks, but Noor just shrugged, claiming he was on a wing-it strategy, realizing he was losing too many shiny toys. Finally, Zadu threw in the towel. He mentioned hearing whispers of a grand festival in the capital, but confessed that after this little escapade, he was about as interested as a cat in a dog park. In pressed for more juicy details, but Zadu only knew it was supposed to be a big deal. He then casually declared he was heading home, but not before pointing out how bizarre Noor truly was. He said he'd met plenty of oddballs, but Noor was like a whole circus on a unicycle. With a parting jab, Zadu told Rollo to count his blessings for dodging a bullet today. Still, he couldn't resist one last sneaky attack, but Noor blocked it with a smirk that could light up a room. Zadu then enveloped himself in black smoke, and just like that, poof, he was gone. Lin suddenly remembers Zadu babbling about some festival in the capital and wonders if Noor is up for a little adventure. Noor thinks it over and decides it's time to pack their bags. But Rollo, he looks like he just saw a ghost in a clown suit. Noor spots Rollo's panic and assures him they won't drag him to Mithra, but the capital should be a walk in the park, if that park was filled with friendly squirrels. Rollo, shaking like a leaf in a windstorm, insists that going to the capital is a terrible idea. Noor, scratching her head, asks what's got him so spooked. Rollo hesitates, then nervously inquires if they hail from the capital. When Noor nods and mentions she was planning to drop him off there, Rollo's face goes paler than a ghost at a Halloween party. He warns them to steer clear of the capital, claiming he's heard whispers of a disaster brewing, something worse than the infamous Black Dragon of Death. He describes a gigantic monster that's supposed to show up and wreak havoc like a toddler in a candy store. Noor's jaw drops as she realizes Rollo's fear is no joke. Lin, looking like she just drank a gallon of espresso, insists they need to hightail it back to the capital right now. Noor agrees, but In is still playing hard to get, refusing to escort Lin back. She reveals that Rien had given her a strict no capital order for Lin's safety. Lin, unfazed, calmly explains that her brother means well, but running away is like trying to outrun a shadow. She insists they must return and sound the alarm about the impending doom. In, still hesitant, tries to argue, but Lin reminds her of the demon folk who lost everything and ended up as scattered as confetti. She mourns that if they run now, they'll end up in the same boat. Seeing the fire in Lin's eyes, In finally gives in. She agrees to head back to the capital, but only if Lin promises to stick to her like glue. Noor then turns to Rollo and asks what he wants to do, giving him the chance to bail if he's not feeling the capital vibes. Rollo, after a brief internal debate that probably involved a lot of mental gymnastics, finally decides to tag along. He confesses that while he might not be the superhero of the group, his people are definitely the source of this mess. Noor, giving a solemn nod, recognizes that the demon can have it rough. Lin, watching Noor's face like it's a soap opera, assumes he's all torn up about the boy's past, but really he's just daydreaming about that poisonous toad he missed out on tasting. Fast forward to the four of them trudging back to the capital. Lin's feeling a bit like a deer in headlights about the journey, but she perks up knowing she's with the guy who took down the Black Dragon of Death and had a tie with Dead Minzadu. As a princess, her job isn't to run away but to make sure this legendary dude makes it to the capital in one piece, even if it means she has to throw herself in front of a dragon or two. She commands In to step on it, and In zooms off like he's in a race. Now, let's cut to the capital, where Rien is strolling through a town that looks like it just lost a game of Jenga. Doan pops up, reporting that they managed to shuffle most of the townsfolk from the old town to the square, and that the 6 sovereigns were instrumental in thwarting the enemy's surprise party. Rien breathes a sigh of relief but keeps his guard up, knowing this is just the opening act. Doan mentions that the Shadow Company is on a scavenger hunt for any enemy signs but has come up empty. Rien, however, is convinced the enemy is just playing the waiting game, probably plotting to pounce on their scattered forces. He wonders where the next big attack will come from, even considering a surprise aerial assault. Dawn reassures him that the Hunter Court has confirmed no flying beasts are around, but Rien spots something fishy in the clouds. He quickly casts his Uncover spell and nearly drops his jaw when he realizes it's none other than the legendary Dragon of Calamity, looking like it just came from a bad hair day. Once upon a time in the land of Why Did I Listen to My Dad, little Noor was all ears as his father spun tales of dragon slayers. You see, kiddo, he said, an evil dragon is like that one neighbor who never returns your lawnmower. If you can take down such a beast, you get to wear the shiny badge of a dragon slayer. He went on to explain that every bit of a dragon is like treasure, claws, fangs, and bones are the ultimate DIY kits for weapons and potions, making the slayers richer than a cat with 9 lives. With eyes as big as saucers, Noor declared, I want to be a dragon slayer. His dad, half proud and half worried, reminded him that dragons are not just oversized lizards. Some have been around longer than your grandma's secret cookie recipe and can shake the ground like a toddler on a sugar high. He recounted a time when a dragon nearly turned their continent into a barbecue pit, warning that someone as pint-sized as Noor would be dragon snacks in no time. But did that stop Noor? Nope. He was still dreaming of slaying dragons like a kid dreaming of being a superhero. Zoom ahead to the present day, where Noor is riding in a carriage, feeling like he just stepped into a horror movie. While everyone else is busy discussing the weather, he senses something sinister lurking nearby. Hey guys, I think we've got a dragon problem. He shouts, and Lin suddenly realizes they're in the presence of the infamous Dragon of Calamity. Meanwhile, in the capital, panic spreads faster than a cat meme as the dragon flies overhead. Rien, feeling like he just ate a bad burrito, wonders if the Empire even knows what kind of trouble they've stirred up. Doan, ever the optimist, thinks the dragon should still be napping since it's only been 150 years since its last wake-up call. But Rien grimly figures out that Mithra has hit the snooze button on this ancient beast, waking it up just for some human drama. As the dragon roars like it just lost a game of charades, Rien yells at Doan to get everyone out of the city, insisting that no one can stay behind, even if they're clutching their favorite socks. As the evacuation kicks off, Mayan watches the chaos unfold. She realizes that the 6 sovereigns, the kingdom's top-notch warriors, are scattered like confetti at a parade, and all the escape routes are as blocked as a toilet after a chili cook-off. This thought creeps in like a bad smell as she contemplates how dire the situation has become. Meanwhile, the 6 sovereigns are busy playing whack-a-mole with monsters both in the city and outside, completely ignoring the dragon that's making its grand entrance. The king, perched in his castle like a bird on a wire, watches the dragon approach with a mix of awe and horror. Gilbert, ever the sensible one, urges him to skedaddle to safety, but the king, with all the stubbornness of a mule, refuses to abandon his people and instead asks Gilbert to lead the evacuation efforts. Meanwhile, In is peering through her binoculars at the dragon, already bracing herself for the chaos that's about to ensue. She mutters that the evacuation should be in full swing by now, while Lin, lost in her thoughts, realizes her dad is probably planning to stick around. She knows all too well that he's about as likely to take on that dragon as a kitten is to wrestle a bear, and silently wishes he'd just hightail it out of there. Noor, on the other hand, is practically bouncing off the walls with excitement at finally seeing a dragon. Rollo finds this utterly ridiculous, especially since Noor just had a face-off with the Black Dragon of Death. But Noor's mind is racing with thoughts of Lin's dad and brother, who are probably still in the city. When he mentions this, Lin confirms it, but insists it's too late to save them. Noor, however, is having none of that negativity and boldly declares he can rescue them if he moves fast enough. Lin hesitates, but Noor jogs her memory about the tactic they used against the goblin. The realization hits Lin like a pie in the face. He's talking about her wind blast spell, which she knows is as unpredictable as a cat on catnip. Noor reassures her, claiming his sword can handle anything, and he feels a burning desire to repay the city that's given him so much by doing whatever he can to help. He believes that if it's just about getting her family out, they might just have a shot. And this flicker of hope ignites in Lin like a match to a firework. She couldn't believe she was about to throw in the towel without even giving it a shot. Sure, that gust of wind wasn't exactly part of the plan, but her master was known for tossing the rulebook out the window like it was last week's leftovers. So with a deep breath and a sprinkle of courage, she decided to jump on board with his crazy scheme. Meanwhile, in the capital, the king was having a flashback to when Dura strutted around like a peacock, claiming he could wipe his tiny kingdom off the map with a flick of his wrist. But even with that looming threat, the king stood his ground, refusing to hand over the dungeon of the lost. Duras laughed in his face, saying the king was squandering a golden opportunity and bragging that with his nation's smarts, he could turn it into a world-dominating machine. The king shot back, saying that real wisdom would have told Duras to steer clear of powers he couldn't even begin to comprehend. Furious, Duras declared that if the king was such a scaredy cat, he didn't deserve to wear the crown. As the king pondered this, he realized that for Duras, the only thing that mattered was getting his grubby hands on that dungeon. He admitted he had underestimated Duras, never thinking he'd go to such lengths for his dreams. Standing atop the castle, he couldn't help but think of his daughter, hoping she was safe. He scolded himself for even thinking of her during a crisis, acknowledging Duras might have a point. Maybe he wasn't fit to be king after all. He grumbled that perhaps a sword would be a better fit for him, and with a heavy heart, he apologized to his people for leading them on a wild goose chase. While he knew he couldn't undo his blunders, he resolved to at least snag one of the dragon's eyes before leaving the capital. In whips up a cylindrical shield and tells Noor to take a stand in front of it. As Noor positions himself, he gets a funny feeling in his gut, like he just ate a whole cake and forgot to share. Lin, meanwhile, decides to play wizard and layers 7 spells on the shield like it's a magical lasagna. Noticing Noor's hesitation, she cheerfully tells him to brace for impact, claiming this blast will be even more epic than the last. With a flourish, she unleashes her wind blast spell. Suddenly, Noor vanishes like a sock in a dryer, leaving Rollo wondering if he just witnessed a magic trick gone wrong. Meanwhile, the dragon saunters over to the king, ready to unleash its fiery breath. The prince watches in horror, realizing this is the same move that once turned a continent into a pancake, and the king knows he's about as likely to scratch the dragon's eye as he is to win a dance-off against a flamingo. Accepting his doom, the king clutches his dagger, hoping to at least show the dragon that humans can be stubborn too. The 7 sovereigns notice the king is gripping the blasting sword, pouring every last ounce of his mana and life force into one last desperate swing. But just as he's about to go full-on hero, Noor pops back into existence, blocking the dragon's face and redirecting its fiery breath like a pro. The crowd gasps as the dragon crashes down, now looking like it just lost a mud wrestling match. The mighty beast, now a dirt-covered mess, stares at Noor in disbelief, roaring about how the strong rule the weak, and how dare this puny human challenge the natural order. With a huff, the dragon swings its tail, but Noor, feeling like a ninja, parries the attack and sends the dragon tumbling again. Noor realizes he just dodged a fiery death and remembers how Lin's spell had knocked him out for a split second when his sword collided with something. It was like someone hit the snooze button on his brain, and suddenly he was wide awake. With a little help from his physical enhancements, he took off like a caffeinated squirrel, letting the wind give him a push. He zoomed right up to the city wall, and with no breaks in sight, he decided to take a flying leap over it. Thanks to Lin's spell, he soared higher than a kite on a sugar rush, but guess who was waiting for him? Yep, Mr. Scaly Breath himself, the dragon. In a split second, he managed to swat away the dragon's fiery breath like it was just a pesky fly, narrowly escaping a crispy fate. Back in the here and now, Noor was just grateful to be alive and thought it might be a good idea to have a little chat with Lin about her magic shenanigans. He realized that the dragon's fiery breath, which had looked like a barbecue invitation, was actually pretty easy to dodge. The dragon's size. No biggie. After surviving Lin's magic roller coaster, he felt like fear had packed its bags and left town. As the dragon shook off its daze, Noor started to think that maybe, just maybe, he could take it on after all. Meanwhile, Lin and the gang finally made it to town, where In quickly reminded her that they needed to rescue the king and skedaddle while Noor was playing Dragon Distraction. But just as they were about to make their move, Rollo shouted a warning about some incoming debris. In barely managed to shield them, but they still ended up tumbling off their horses like a bunch of clumsy acrobats. With her magical barrier still up, In told Lin to hunker down behind her, and that's when Lin spotted 3 goblin emperors standing right in their way, looking like they were ready to throw a royal tantrum. She spots that these little critters are smaller than the big bad she faced before, but she knows they're still tough cookies, so she starts pondering how to tackle this showdown. She wonders what Noor would do in this pickle. With a newfound swagger, she tells In there's no need to panic after all. They're just goblins. In nods in agreement, especially since these goblins are like ants compared to the Dragon of Calamity, so they chill out and gear up to take on the goblin emperors. The monsters charge in like they just heard there's a sale on treasure, but Lin quickly launches some ice lancelets. Unfortunately, they bounce off like rubber balls. Just when the goblins are about to unleash their chaos, Rollo yells stop, like a boss, and suddenly Lin has the perfect chance to freeze those little rascals in their tracks. In then transforms her shield into a divine sword and slices through the frozen goblins like they're made of butter. Lin watches in awe, thinking In really deserves the title of divine sword. She's also flabbergasted that Rollo could halt those monsters with just one command. It's hard to believe the demon kin have such power, and seeing the young lad muster all his courage gives her the pep talk she needs to go all out too. Meanwhile, Noor is busy playing dodgeball with the dragon's attacks, and the dragon is getting seriously ticked off. We notice that Noor's parries are actually chipping away at the dragon's claws and scales, which is a major shocker for the dragon since it thought it was invincible. Noor is flabbergasted to discover that his sword is tougher than a $2 steak, not even a scratch after all his wild swings. He starts to wonder if he's accidentally picked up Excalibur's long-lost cousin. But hey, who cares? The dragon, sensing it's finally met its match, decides to take flight and charge up a breath attack that could roast marshmallows from a mile away. But Noor. He deflects it like he's swatting away a pesky fly, leaving everyone, including the dragon, gobsmacked. The dragon lets out a roar that could wake the neighbors, and Rollo chimes in, saying it's mad because it recognizes Noor as a real contender, but Noor hasn't exactly rolled out the red carpet for it. The king chimes in, noting that dragons are like that one friend who can't take a joke, they're super prideful. The once mighty Dragon of Calamity is starting to sweat a little. It suddenly realizes it might not be the top dog after all, and launches one last, desperate attack. But Noor, with the finesse of a cat on a hot tin roof, parries it, and whoosh slices off one of the dragon's claws. The dragon, now humbled and a bit miffed, bows down to Noor in a fit of rage. Rollo points out that this bow is a sign of submission, but Noor, still scratching his head, wonders what on earth is going on. He spots the dragon's severed claw and remembers his dad's tales about how dragon parts are like gold in the crafting world, perfect for making weapons and potions. He also recalls that those who take down a dragon get to wear the title of Dragon Slayer. But as he gazes into the dragon's big, sad eyes, Noor has an epiphany maybe being a hero isn't his jam after all. He lowers his sword, plops down, and admits that saving the day might be better left to someone else. Rollo suddenly realizes that the dragon has decided it's had enough of the fighting and is now more interested in a nap than a brawl. Lin and the gang stroll over to Noor, their faces a delightful mix of relief and awe, like they just found out their favorite pizza place delivers. Noor, with a grin, assures everyone he's fine and gives Rollo a thank you that leaves Rollo scratching his head like he just walked into a room and forgot why. Noor explains that the dragon must have chilled out because Rollo gave it the "OL stop it." Look, Rollo, however, insists he didn't do anything, which sends Noor's brain into a bit of a twist. If Rollo didn't do anything, then why did the dragon suddenly decide to play nice? Noor concludes that maybe the dragon was just scared stiff by Rollo's presence, thinking he might be the dragon whisperer or something. The air goes still when Noor tells Rollo to send the dragon back to its lair, but the others jump in like they just spotted a bear at a picnic, reminding everyone that the dragon is still a big, scaly threat. Noor gets it but doesn't want to hurt the creature, admitting his request is a tad selfish. Lin, being the voice of reason, nods in agreement, while Rollo is left wondering if he can even boss around a dragon. He feels like all he can do is politely ask it to leave, maybe with a side of cookies. Noor, sensing Rollo's uncertainty, tries to pump him up, saying that Lin and In wouldn't bat an eye at him flexing his dragon-taming muscles. This gives Rollo just enough confidence to give it a whirl. He manages to chat with the dragon, who surprisingly tells Noor it's ready to follow Rollo's orders. The girls are left with their jaws on the floor, while Noor, still a bit lost, assumes the dragon is calling Rollo its master. Noor instructs Rollo to have the dragon quietly head home and promise to never bother humans again. Rollo passes on the message, and to everyone's shock, the dragon nods in agreement and takes off into the sky, letting out a final roar that sounds suspiciously like a farewell before vanishing into the horizon. The crowd gasps in disbelief as the legendary dragon soars away, like it's auditioning for a nature documentary. But Noor's heart drops when a colossal blast sends the majestic creature tumbling from the sky like a clumsy bird. Panic spreads faster than a cat meme on the internet when they realize that dastardly Duras, the Empire's villainous leader, is the mastermind behind this aerial ambush. With a smirk that could curdle milk, Duras taunts the fallen dragon, claiming that even a creature that's been around since the dawn of time is just a glorified lizard in the end. To him, the dragon is merely a chess piece that failed to checkmate the capital, so he decides to throw a party anyway and rallies his enormous army nearby. The sheer number of troops and their firepower sends shivers down everyone's spines, like they just heard a ghost story at a campfire. Then, in a flashback that feels like a poorly edited movie montage, we see how the Empire meticulously plotted this grand assault. After the dragons had their fun demolishing the capital, the troops were set to swoop in for some good old-fashioned cleanup. The foot soldiers were armed with magic swords and shields, while the elite units strutted around in enchanted armor, wielding magical cannons like they were at a sci-fi convention. They even prepared gigantic protective shields and enormous mana cannons, because why not go big or go home? The king was over the moon with this plan, but one soldier, Randus, had a nagging feeling that this war might not be the best idea for the long haul. Duras, however, quickly dismissed him, declaring that no one would rain on their parade and vowing to show the world just how powerful their magic really was. Duras is determined to make this war legendary, wanting everyone to remember Clay's kingdom as a bunch of bumbling fools who neglected the dungeon of the lost and walked right into their own doom. And as for Duras, he's set on being the hero who liberates the country from its own stupidity, cape and all. Close by, Noor and the gang stumble upon a dragon that looks like it just lost a fight with a boulder, but they can't tell if it's still breathing without getting a little too cozy. Out of nowhere, they spot the magical Empire's forces, who seem to have a knack for showing up at the worst times. They catch a glimpse of Princess Lin, but the real kicker is that In is tagging along. In is like the rock star of legends, and Duras jumps to the conclusion that she must be the one who saved the capital. He dramatically announces that the age of legends is over, and now it's time for the wise guys to take the wheel. Duras gives the order to fire the mana cannon, because even if In is the so-called divine shield, this bad boy is designed to turn her into a crispy critter. He's got a twisted love for war, and he's ready to add another legend to his trophy wall. The mana cannon starts charging up, and the crew notices it just in time for In to shout, "Run for your lives." And the cannon fires, and Duras smugly thinks he's just won the lottery. But In stays cool as a cucumber while the massive beam zooms toward her, and in a jaw-dropping twist, Noor steps up and deflects the colossal attack like it's a beach ball. The beam goes haywire, scattering like confetti, leaving everyone with their jaws on the floor. Duras' troops are so flabbergasted they think the cannon just had a midlife crisis, so Duras orders them to get ready for round 2. Noor is left scratching his head at the size of the enemy forces, and the girls fill him in that they're here to turn the kingdom into a pancake. Sure, Clay's kingdom has its own army, but they're about as outmatched as a kitten in a lion's den. In tells Lin to hightail it with her, and Lin turns to Noor, asking what his grand plan is. Noor, with a look that says obviously, is just trying to figure out how to make a speedy exit. Lin nods, but then throws in a cheeky question, clearly thinking he's about to pull off some heroic stunt. Noor is left utterly confused by her grin, wondering if she's completely misread the situation. He's waving his arms like a flag at a marathon, trying to signal that he's all about the great escape, but then, bam. Another attack crashes the party. In steps up this time, blocking the incoming chaos, while a grumpy Duras decides it's time to play it safe and retreats to the back like a cat avoiding a bath. They're getting squished by a barrage of relentless attacks, and Noor suddenly has an epiphany. The only way out is to pull a classic Houdini. He announces to the crew that he'll whip up a distraction so they can hightail it out of there. Noor might think he's about as useful in a brawl as a chocolate teapot, but when it comes to sprinting away from danger, he's got the speed of a gazelle on roller skates. When we take a stroll down memory lane, we find that Noor perfected his escape artistry by sprinting away from actual bee swarms, so his grand strategy is to zip around the battlefield like a caffeinated squirrel. Lin, in her infinite wisdom, thinks she's being a team player and decides to give him a little wind-powered push. Noor's eyes bulge like saucers as he realizes she's about to unleash her wind blast on him again, but she promises she'll keep it under control this time. Noor attempts to explain that he's not exactly in the mood to become a casualty today, but alas, there's no time for a heart-to-heart. An attack is looming, so Noor revs up his engines, and Lin sends him flying. To everyone's astonishment, Noor manages to swat away the Empire's attacks while soaring through the air. There's no turning back now. He charges straight into the massive army, showcasing the parry skills he's been honing for ages. Noor starts disarming soldiers like a magician at a kid's party. His main mission, just to buy some time for his pals to skedaddle, so he's in full tornado mode, deflecting anything that dares cross his path. Duras is about to lose his marbles, watching his troops get schooled. All the weapons Noor deflected earlier are now raining down like confetti at a parade, and even a gigantic shield has been flipped by Noor's antics. Duras is left scratching his head, trying to comprehend how this guy is bending the laws of physics like a pretzel. Noor's mayhem continues, and Duras is left wondering just who on earth he's up against. Noor suddenly finds himself face to face with Duras, and it hits Duras like a ton of bricks. This is the guy who was just hanging out with Lin a hot second ago. Duras is flabbergasted, trying to figure out how Noor managed to teleport from there to here. Even weirder, Noor is completely ignoring everyone else, his eyes locked on Duras like he's the last slice of pizza at a party. Panic starts to bubble up in Duras as he realizes Noor might actually know he's the Emperor. Things go from bad to worse when Noor grabs him, and Duras, in a state of sheer panic, tries to remind himself that he's decked out in armor and wielding a sword made from the toughest stuff in the universe. Time to show this guy who's boss. But before he can even swing, Noor zips right past him like a squirrel on espresso. Duras thinks he's off the hook, but then his own cannons start treating him like a pinata. Noor is darting around the battlefield like a hyperactive toddler, and Duras' world comes crashing down as he watches his once mighty army get obliterated. Those shields he thought could withstand a dragon's breath, now they're just glorified paper plates. In a fit of disbelief and fury, Duras demands to know who on earth Noor really is. Then, out of the corner of his eye, Duras spots the Black Blade, the legendary sword that used to be his pride and joy behind the throne. A chill runs down his spine like he just saw a ghost. That sword is his ultimate obsession, the one treasure he's been drooling over more than a kid in a candy store. What really sends Duras into a panic is the fact that this sword is made from some mysterious metal that's supposedly heavier than a sumo wrestler on a trampoline. Even the brawny King Clays needs both hands to swing it like a toddler trying to lift a fridge, yet here's Noor, casually tossing it over his shoulder like it's a feather duster. Duras is now so scared he could win a wedding contest, realizing that Noor has wiped out his entire army and is probably keeping him alive just for kicks. The fear hits him like a ton of bricks, and he bolts like a rabbit on espresso, jumping onto his horse and galloping away from Noor faster than a cat from a bath. Now, let's flip the scene to Noor's perspective. After he deflected the soldiers' weapons, he finally got a breather and thought, "Ah, sweet relief." But then he spotted a guy behind him who looked like he just wandered off the set of a retirement home, decked out in shiny armor. Seriously, what's a frail old dude doing in the middle of a battlefield? Even the king's horse looked like it was ready for a fashion show. Noor squinted at the old man, trying to figure out what was so special about him. Suddenly, he noticed the weapons he had just parried were plummeting back to the ground like they were auditioning for a gravity commercial. Snapping back to reality, he rushed to parry them again before the soldiers could snatch them up. He was on a mission to keep parrying everything in sight. Then he spotted some bulkheads and thought, why not, and parried those too, even though he had no clue what they were. A moment later, he found himself back near the king, still scratching his head about the old man. But then he remembered that if he took too long, the soldiers would be back in action, so he dove back into parrying like it was an Olympic sport. As Noor paused to catch his breath near the king, he noticed the old fellow squinting at him like he was trying to remember where he left his glasses. Noor thought, does this guy actually know me, or is he just really bad at recognizing faces? But before he could ponder further, the king, looking like he just saw a ghost, whipped out his sword as if it were a magic wand and shouted, "En garde." Noor, however, figured that parrying the sword of a man who looked like he might break a hip at any moment wasn't worth the effort. So, he sidestepped the old-timer and went on to deal with the real threats, those pesky magic cannons. Just then, a cannonball landed with a thud near the king, and Noor thought, if this guy sticks around, he's going to end up as a royal pancake. So he approached the king again, who was shaking like a leaf in a windstorm, and asked why Noor hadn't turned him into a kebab yet. Noor realized the king thought he was on a mission to collect royal heads, which was a bit awkward considering he was just trying to help. So he dropped his sword and attempted to reassure the king, but all that came out was a wheeze. He flashed a smile, hoping to convey peace, but the king interpreted it as a sinister grin and took off on his horse like it was the Kentucky Derby. Meanwhile, Noor started feeling the consequences of his battlefield sprinting. His chest felt like it was auditioning for a role in a horror movie as he coughed up what could only be described as a fine vintage of blood. The soldiers of Mithra, sensing an opportunity, began to close in like a pack of hungry wolves. Noor realized he might have overdone it a bit, and that his low-level healing spell was about as effective as a chocolate teapot right now. As the soldiers surrounded him, a wave of dizziness hit him like a surprise pie to the face, and he thought, well, this could be it. His vision blurred, but he clung to the hope that Lin and the others were making a clean getaway, preferably without any royal pancake incidents. Just then, a surprise long-range attack rains down on the Mithra soldiers, and Noor squints through the chaos. Yep, it's definitely Mian's handiwork. Enter Gilbert, who swoops in like a superhero with his doctor. Grave skill, clearing out the soldiers like they're pesky flies buzzing around a picnic. Noor breathes a sigh of relief. Even if he still can't quite remember Gilbert's name, maybe he'll just call him that guy. Gilbert, meanwhile, is flabbergasted by the mess Noor has made, and just when things couldn't get more chaotic, Sig shows up fashionably late, apologizing like he's missed a dinner reservation. Noor finally recognizes him, but Sig's memory seems to be on vacation. Sig gives Noor a pat on the back for holding the fort, and then he and Gilbert charge off like they're in a buddy cop movie, taking down soldiers left and right. Noor watches in awe, thinking, wow, this is the kind of swordsman I always wanted to be, minus the whole not remembering names thing. Meanwhile, Sig is shaking his head, marveling at how wild he's fighting, despite being told to keep it cool. Vlan is feeling a bit overwhelmed, thinking there are too many enemies to handle, while S chimes in with a quip about how they can't get intel from corpses, because, living people are just so much more chatty, especially when you're offering to keep their limbs as souvenirs. Oken looks like he's just seen a ghost, and S bursts into laughter, assuring him he's just joking. He then mentions that Oken's mages should be rolling in soon, so he better get his game face on. When the mages finally show up, Oken casts a spell called Earthbind, pinning the soldiers to the ground like they're stuck in a really bad game of musical chairs. Dura's forces come charging in next, and S can't help but notice Oken is having the time of his life. Hulin, with a smirk, decides to join the fun and traps the soldiers in a giant stone cage, because who doesn't love a good cage match? San realizes it's his moment to shine, so he sets out to rescue the survivors and guide them to a brighter future. Meanwhile, Noor is pleasantly surprised to see all his old instructors gathered around, feeling a wave of nostalgia wash over him. A couple of the instructors spot Noor, and right after Lin works her magic and heals him, he gives her a grateful nod. But Lin, ever the caring type, tells him to take it easy for a bit longer. Noor, however, insists he's as fit as a fiddle, even though his stomach is growling louder than a bear in a honey factory. Then Sig chimes in, revealing that during his intense interrogation session, a commanding officer spilled the beans Mithra is out of troops. They've thrown everything but the kitchen sink at them. But guess what? The Emperor has pulled a Houdini and vanished. Lan is flabbergasted, wondering why the old Emperor would even think about joining the fray. He finds it utterly ludicrous for a so-called wise ruler to pull such a harebrained stunt. He muses if the old geezer is starting to lose his marbles. Suddenly, Noor connects the dots and realizes they're talking about the shiny old dude he spotted earlier. Oken raises an eyebrow, asking if Noor knows who they're on about, and Noor explains he met the guy not long ago, decked out in armor so shiny he could blind a raccoon. Lan puts two and two together and figures the Emperor must have been rocking some orichalcum armor, which is top-notch gear that can handle all sorts of shenanigans. It makes sense that the Emperor would skedaddle if his horse was decked out in that bling. Sig adds that if the Emperor crosses the border, they're toast thanks to a fortress and a bridge over a ravine. Oken lets out a dramatic sigh, lamenting their chances of catching up with him using normal means, and suggests they might have a shot if they could sprout wings. Noor, with a calm demeanor, drops the bombshell that they might just be able to do that. Everyone gasps, but he quickly clarifies it's only possible if a certain creature is still kicking. After a bit of time, they make their way to the site where the dragon took a nosedive. Oken and S are practically bouncing with excitement at the chance to see such a colossal critter up close. S can hardly believe it's his first gig healing something so enormous, and he dives right in, trying to patch up the dragon's outer boo-boos. He's got the outside looking better, but those internal oopsies are going to take a bit longer. While he's at it, he casually mentions to Noor that he's really sprouted up. Oken, with a look of shock, realizes this young fella is actually Noor. Noor, with a grin, replies that it's been ages since they last crossed paths, and he's genuinely surprised Oken is still kicking. Vogan, overhearing this, raises an eyebrow and declares he's planning to stick around for another century. Noor chuckles, thinking it's a joke, but Vogan is dead serious. Alright then, Noor says, not wanting to push it. If Vogan's sure about healing the beast, he reassures him they've got Rollo in their corner. Oken turns to Rollo, asking if he's feeling up to the task, but Rollo sheepishly admits he's about as confident as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs, which makes Oken's stomach do a little flip. Noor gives him a thumbs up, saying it'll all work out, and just then, the dragon jolts awake. Noor nudges Rollo to start chatting with it, and the dragon lets out a roar that could wake the neighbors. Noor immediately picks up on the dragon's mood, definitely not happy, and Rollo is left scratching his head, wondering how no one else seems to notice the dragon's not exactly thrilled. Noor, the mountain kid, claims he can feel the dragon's vibes like a mystical mood ring. Rollo, the dragon whisperer, pipes up that the dragon is itching for revenge and doesn't want to wait for a formal invitation. Oken's jaw drops, who knew Rollo had such dragon taming skills. Rollo, trying to clear the air, insists he's not the dragon's boss, but before he can finish his thought, the dragon lets out a roar that could wake the neighbors. Rollo quickly announces that the dragon is ready to bolt. Noor rallies the troops, and Lin and In step up like they're auditioning for a buddy cop movie. Noor's taken aback, they're in. They explain that Rollo needs a dragon chauffeur since he's the only one who can chat with it, and they'll be the bodyguards. Lin asks if Noor is in too, and he hesitates, sweating bullets because heights are not his jam. But he remembers he's the mastermind behind this wild plan, so he reluctantly agrees. Lin beams, saying having him along is like having 100 muscle-bound superheroes. Sans chimes in, saying he's tagging along to keep an eye on his patient until the very end. Kara, the eager beaver, jumps in, making Noor giddy to see another teacher in action. Kara then declares they'll need some serious stealth skills to ride a beast that big, and he's ready to take on that challenge. O wants to join the fun too, but Sans tells him to babysit his stone cage, leaving Oken with no choice but to nod in defeat. Just then, King Clay and his sunshine, Renee, stroll in, and Lin breathes a sigh of relief. They're safe. They're equally happy to see her in one piece. In knelt down and tell Rain to go ahead and punish her for not following his silly orders, but he just chuckles and admits he's the one who goofed up by giving such a ridiculous command. He's just thrilled she's back. Then he decides to hop on the dragon too, realizing they'll need a negotiator for whatever chaos awaits. Everyone climbs aboard the dragon, and the king hands the reins to Renee, saying, "You're in charge of the big decisions now." He turns to Noor and says, "Hey, can you keep an eye on my kids?" Noor nods, and the king sheepishly apologizes for always calling on him for help. It's like a royal game of tag, but with dragons. Rolo then gives the dragon the go-ahead to take off, and whoosh, they're airborne. Meanwhile, Dandel and Sig spot the dragon soaring through the sky. Dandel pokes Sig and asks if he's cool with keeping Mum around Noor, especially after finally tracking him down after ages. Sig shrugs and says he's totally fine with it, adding that Noor never really needed them to play the role of sidekicks in his epic saga. He chuckles at the thought of adopting Noor and raising him. What a wild idea. Dandel nods, agreeing that Noor is more like a legendary hero than a kid needing a family. Then, Sig's mind drifts to the sight of the army's weapons zooming by in the distance, and he admits he feels a bit like a couch potato. He realizes he's been wasting time thinking he could train others when he should be training himself. Dandel raises an eyebrow, noting that Sig seems oddly cheerful for a guy who's just confessed to feeling ashamed. Sig chuckles, saying it's hard not to be happy after the show Noor just put on. Dandel nods in agreement, and then we switch gears to Noor and the gang, who are on a treasure hunt for Diaz but are having a bit of a tough time finding him. They start to wonder if he's already crossed the border when they spot a bridge. So Kara pipes up, saying that the land past the bridge is firmly in the Empire's grip and warns against charging in like a bull in a china shop. He suggests they turn back, but before anyone can say no, Lin spots something zipping across the bridge, and it's Darius. Kay chimes in, noting that Darius is getting way too close to the capital's defenses and warns that if they step into Empire territory, they might as well be wearing a welcome sign. He mentions that they're currently cloaked in magic, but that'll vanish faster than a magician's rabbit once the enemy catches wind of them. Renee gets it, but is hell-bent on not letting the Emperor slip away, knowing that Mithra has some seriously powerful magical gadgets. If Diaz escapes, he could beef up their military like a bodybuilder on protein shakes, so Ren's not about to give him a breather. He then turns to Ran and Lin, asking if he can go all demolition derby on the area. Lin thinks No must be fuming after the capital incident. In then suggests it'd be a genius move to take out the fort's defenses while they still can. Renee nods in agreement, and with a flick of her divine sword, in goes all superhero on the fort, obliterating it in seconds with a little help from Karoo, ensuring their getaway is as smooth as butter. Renee is thrilled and tells Lin that their next moves will shape the war's fate, asking if she's ready for the roller coaster ahead. Lin confidently replies that she's ready, believing everyone here has powers that could make a superhero jealous, and she feels invincible as long as they stick together, especially with No by their side. Little does she know, No is actually so scared of heights that he's already fainted. When the Emperor finally stumbles back to the fort, his initial fright morphs into a full-blown rage as he relives the epic embarrassment he just endured. As he storms past his officials, they can't help but notice he looks like he just lost a mud wrestling match with a skunk. They ask why he's covered in muck and smells like a questionable fish market. In a fit of fury, the Emperor starts blaming his soldiers for their spectacular failure, despite having enough high-tech gadgets to make a sci-fi movie jealous. But just as he's getting into his groove of ranting, one of the officials spots something outside the window. The Emperor glances up, and his fear comes rushing back like a bad burrito as he sees the Calamity Dragon swooping toward the Empire. Panic sets in. How is that dragon still alive? Didn't they blast it with a laser beam that could fry a planet? Then it hits him those pesky saints must have pulled off some kind of resurrection magic. But wait, who's controlling the dragon? In a voice that could shatter glass, he demands to know where his beast tamer is, only to find out that Master Lud has already skipped town. The Emperor's face contorts with rage as he realizes Lud must have pulled a fast one on him. He starts throwing a tantrum worthy of a toddler denied dessert. Randa steps in, insisting that yelling won't fix anything, but the Emperor snaps back, demanding Randus stop being a couch potato and actually do something heroic. Randus rolls his eyes and walks away, clearly done with the Emperor's melodrama. Meanwhile, the Emperor barks orders to prep Kronos, his secret weapon, to blast that dragon out of the sky. The officials immediately protest, reminding him that Kronos is still in the let's not blow up the city phase, but the Emperor doesn't care and kicks one of them across the room in a fit of rage. He argues that they have no other options because apparently logic is for losers. If they do nothing, the dragon will destroy the city anyway. So he insists there's no need to worry about collateral damage. And if necessary, they can use the mana targeting system to aim it precisely. The officials, with no choice but to obey, carry out the Emperor's orders. So, the entire city plunges into darkness as the Koran's laser cannon locks onto the dragon's mana signature. The Emperor watches with confidence, certain this will destroy the beast. After all, this is the most powerful weapon his empire has ever created. The laser then fires, streaking through the sky straight toward the dragon. But to everyone's shock, something on the dragon's head deflects the beam, causing it to veer off course. The Emperor's face twists in disbelief, and even things go from bad to worse as the mana tracking settings backfire, redirecting the laser beams toward the Empire's own mana generators. And without these, the Empire is left completely defenseless. The Emperor then furiously blames the officials despite being the one who ordered the weapon to be fired in the first place. So one by one, the officials have had enough, and they quit on the spot, abandoning him to watch helplessly as his empire crumbles and burns. Moments earlier, the group had been approaching the Empire on the dragon's back when No suddenly sensed something coming, and it was a laser beam, far stronger than the last. With no time to dodge, No, without hesitation, leaped forward and parried the blast. He succeeded in diverting it, but being unable to fly, he ended up crashing directly into the Emperor's castle. Inside, the Emperor finds himself surrounded by Randus and a few knights who are equally fed up with him. The Emperor demands to know what Randus thinks he's doing. So Randus calmly explains that to save the Empire, he needs to eliminate its greatest threat, the Emperor himself. The Emperor then desperately cries out for someone, anyone, to save him, but no one is left who will obey his commands. Well, it looks like the Emperor's days are numbered. Just as Randus is about to deliver the final blow, in comes No, crashing through the ceiling like a clumsy superhero, landing smack dab in the Emperor's throne room. No takes a moment to soak in the scene, thinking, wow, talk about a lucky landing. Randus, sword raised and looking all serious, asks if No plans to play bodyguard for the Emperor. No, with all the seriousness of a cat in a sunbeam, replies that he couldn't care less about the Emperor, but he's not a fan of the knights playing executioner. Just then, one of the knights whips out a gun and takes a shot at the Emperor, but No deflects the bullet and gently places the Emperor's head on the ground like a delicate egg. Randus and his crew, realizing they're up against a real pro, decide to charge at No all at once, but he parries their attacks like he's swatting flies at a picnic. Randus tries to reason with him, claiming the Emperor has brought doom upon the land and must pay the price. But before they can finish their dramatic monologue, another knight throws a bomb, aiming for the Emperor. No spots it, kicks the Emperor out of the way like a soccer ball, and the poor guy ends up tumbling against the wall. No wonders aloud why the Darius Knights are so eager to off their own ruler. But one knight points out that No has already done more damage than they have. Randus insists the Emperor must meet his end and throws more bombs like he's in a fireworks competition. But No grabs the Emperor by the leg and gently sets him back down like a toddler who's just learned to walk. Then No suggests that since the Emperor is already ancient, why not just lock him up and let time do the dirty work? Randus rolls his eyes, explaining that with enemies lurking and the Dragon of Calamity on the way, they need to off the Emperor to show they're ready to throw in the towel. Just then, a voice chimes in, saying that killing the Emperor is pointless because he can't suffer for his crimes if he's already 6 feet under. Rene has just waltzed in with the gang, looking like he just stepped off a royal catwalk. He gives Nora a big ol' thank you for all the hard work, but declares that from now on he's the captain of this ship. He turns to Lin and says, hey, if I take a tumble, can you work your magic? Nora and Lin nod like bobbleheads and skedaddle out of the throne room, leaving Rene to take the reins. He faces the knights, puffing out his chest like a peacock, assuring them they're as safe as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. He's got no beef with them, but the Emperor, well, that's a different story. The Emperor, looking like a deer caught in headlights, begs for mercy like a kid who just broke a priceless vase. To everyone's shock, Rene says he'll let him off the hook, but only if the Emperor is ready to walk a mile in the shoes of his victims. He lays it out the Emperor's shenanigans have left the kingdom in ruins, and now it's time for a little payback. He asks if anyone has a problem with this plan, but the silence is louder than a marching band. It's settled the Emperor will get a taste of his own medicine. The Emperor glances around, his face a mix of confusion and sheer terror, wondering how on earth he'll survive this nightmare. Then Sans steps up, cool as a cucumber, saying he'll be there to fix the Emperor up after every bone-crunching, gut-wrenching moment, and if he passes out from the pain, Kara will be right there to give him a wake-up call. The Emperor is now so scared he could fill a swimming pool, and, well, he kind of does. Rene, noticing the puddle forming, assures everyone he's not a sadist, he just wants the Emperor to really get what he dished out. Honestly, he thinks he's being pretty generous with this whole torture. Inside the healing chamber, Noor is feeling like $1,000,000 thanks to Lin's magical touch. But as he gazes out at the Empire, a wave of guilt crashes over him like a bad sitcom punchline. He's the one who sent that laser flying. Lin, sensing his inner turmoil, reminding him that he was just trying to save the day. Plus, no one turned into a crispy critter because the lasers only zapped the Empire's mana generators. She reassures him that the high mana zones were as empty as a buffet after a family reunion, so no casualties there. Still, she admits that blowing up the generators is like taking the batteries out of a remote. It's going to mess with everyone's lives. Just then, Rene, Carew, and Sans burst in like they just won the lottery, announcing they've struck a deal. The Empire and the Kingdom are now best buds focused on rebuilding. Noor, scratching his head, wonders how the war wrapped up faster than a magician's trick and asks about the Emperor. Rene spills the beans that the emperor has thrown in the towel and is passing the crown to his grandkid, who's only 10. Until the little tyke is ready to rule, the knights will be babysitting the throne. At that moment, the knights swagger out of the castle, and Randus, looking sheepish, immediately apologizes to Noor for his earlier attack. He's ready to do whatever it takes to make things right, but Noor waves it off like a pesky fly, saying it's all good. Relieved, Randus offers a helping hand, promising that if Noor ever needs anything, the knights will be there faster than a pizza delivery. Noor chuckles and tells him he should be the one saying sorry for the city's makeover. Randus gives a reassuring pat on the back, saying there's no need for guilt trips since the whole mess was the former emperor's fault. Plus, he points out that the only thing blown up was some property, and thankfully no one got hurt. So, it's just a matter of playing a game of let's rebuild. And honestly, the Empire's crimes are like comparing a toddler's finger painting to the Mona Lisa. Still, No insists on lending a hand, even if it's just to play the role of a professional rubble clearer. But before they can get their construction hats on, the dragon starts yawning like it just binge-watched a soap opera, so they all hop on its back and zoom off to the kingdom. No, however, is still not a fan of flying. He's more of a keep my feet on the ground. When they finally land, the king rushes over, looking like he just remembered he left the oven on. He apologizes for leaving Renee to juggle all the negotiations solo and wants to hear the juicy details later. But first, he's got to thank their hero. No nods, saying he practically saved the whole capital and deserves a trophy or something. But No quickly waves his hands like he's swatting away a fly, saying he doesn't need any shiny trinkets. The king, not one to let a hero slip away empty-handed, insists that he can't just let No walk off into the sunset without a pat on the back. After all, he saved the entire country. Noor knows it's the norm to get a reward, but he's drawing a blank on what he actually wants. Then, he glances at Rollo and a light bulb goes off in his head. He turns to the king and says, "Actually, I do have a request." The king perks up like a dog hearing the word walk, and asks what it is. No explains that he wants Rollo, the little demon folk kid who's been left out in the cold, to be taken care of and live in the capital like a regular citizen. Noor admits he thought about adopting Rollo himself, but his life is more cozy cottage. So he figures Rollo would be better off with a family that can afford more than just instant noodles. Noor thinks it would be absolutely fabulous if the king could hook Rollo up with a tiny plot of land and a cozy little house. The king, with his royal ears perked up, hears the request loud and clear. But there's a hiccup. The holy theocracy of Mithril has branded all demon folk as public enemy number one. So letting Rollo join the citizen club might just send their diplomatic relations with Mithril into a tailspin. The king is about to suggest a different plan, but Noor jumps in, insisting he only wants Rollo to be safe. He adds that if the king has any spare goodies, it'd be wiser to use them for fixing up the kingdom instead. The king, taken aback by Noor's fierce determination, can't help but burst into a fit of laughter. Ray, meanwhile, looks at Noor and suddenly remembers that time he almost became Frog Dragon Chow. He recalls wishing for a life where he wouldn't have to dodge death and could actually savor some tasty grub, but he never thought that dream could be real. Later on, Rollo wakes up in a toasty bed and finds himself at a dinner table with In, who cheerfully informs him that he'll be crashing with her for a while. Rollo, still in a daze, doesn't know how to respond, so In gives him a warm smile and nudges him to dig into his food before it turns into a science experiment. But Rollo, still reeling from the shock, can't believe all this is actually for him. For the first time ever, he's served fresh, non-moldy food, and as he takes that first glorious bite, tears of joy start streaming down his face, a huge grin spreading as he exclaims, "This is too darn delicious." Noor returns to the kingdom, and whoa, talk about a makeover. The place looks like it just survived a tornado party. But hey, at least the guild is still standing, and he's thrilled to see them all in one piece. He picks up the guild sign, reminiscing about the time the master wouldn't let him join because he couldn't juggle flaming swords or something. But now, he's just happy to reconnect with his old teachers. Flashback alert. 15 years ago, Noor was all fired up to join Sig's school to become a swordsman. Sig, the wise sage, warns him that the training is tougher than a two-headed ogre, but Noor's like, bring it on. So he dives into training, and by the end of day one, he's more exhausted than a cat in a dog park. Sig bets he won't last 3 days, but surprise, he makes it to day 10, and Sig's jaw drops in disbelief. They train with this giant ball that looks like it's been on a diet of steroids. When it's Noor's turn, he tries to parry it, but instead, he ends up with a broken arm. Sig tells him to never drop his sword because enemies don't do coffee breaks. Noor picks it up like a champ, and Sig's thinking, this kid might actually have a shot. Then Noor asks about getting a skill, but Sig's like, that's not a buffet, you can't just pick what you want. So they head outside, and Sig shows off by slicing leaves like a ninja chef. Noor's eyes go wide, and Sig thinks he probably missed the whole thing. But Noor, being the copycat he is, starts mimicking Sig, and Sig's brain nearly explodes. This kid might outshine him. Fast forward 2 months, and Noor's parrying that giant ball like it's a beach ball at a summer picnic. But wait, 3 months in, and he still hasn't learned a skill. Sig scratching his head, suggesting he might want to try a different school. So, off he goes to train with Dandel, who takes one look at Noor and thinks he's too small and weak to be a warrior. But since Sig put in a good word, Dandel gives him a shot. Dandel tells Noor that being a warrior means being the party's shield, so they start training with rocks. Dandel is totally blown away when Noor manages to stick around for 2 whole months, but then boom. A massive crater crashes down like it's auditioning for a disaster movie. Just in the nick of time, Dandel swoops in to save Noor, who was feeling like a superhero, convinced he could be the ultimate shield if he just picked up a skill or two. But after 3 months of this superhero fantasy, Dandel finally says, "Hey buddy, maybe try something else." So off Noor goes to archery school to train with Mia. She's contemplating giving him the boot, telling him to toss a rock at a distant target. But wouldn't you know it, he nails it on the first try. Now she's stuck with him. Training begins, but Noor's so strong he obliterates his bow faster than you can say oops. Mia, feeling generous, lends him her personal bow, but surprise, surprise, he wrecks that one too. So she decides to have him stick to throwing rocks. As she watches him hurl stones like a pro, she's baffled and asks how he got so good. He casually mentions he used to hunt birds with them, and Mia's jaw drops when she finds out he was hunting thunderhawks. Even seasoned hunters break a sweat over those bad boys. 3 months later, Mia tells him to hit the road, and Noor's like, "But I haven't learned anything." She just smirks and says, "Your rock throwing skills are already better than most archers." Next, Noor teams up with Karoo to work on his stealth. They tackle a booby-trapped corridor, and while everyone else is tiptoeing around, Noor just charges through, setting off every trap like it's a game show. He manages to parry all the attacks, leaving Karoo both impressed and slightly concerned that Noor missed the point of the exercise. At the end of 3 months, Karoo tells him, "You might not be cut out for espionage, but your stamina is off the charts." Finally, Noor meets Oken, but magic doesn't seem to be his thing. Oken checks him out and says, buddy, it looks like you're running on empty, no mana in sight." He suggests trying the mana residence room, and Noor's all pumped up to give it a shot. Oken, however, warns him, if it gets too intense, you better bail. After a few days, Oken gets the news that Noor is still holed up in the room, and panic sets in. He imagines Noor could turn into a super sensory ninja and take him out. But when he checks, Noor is just chilling like a villain, so Oken boots him out, claiming he's on the verge of a breakthrough. Spoiler alert, 3 months later, he's only managed to conjure a tiny flame. Oak tries to be the supportive friend, but Noor surprises him by creating a second flame. Oken is flabbergasted how can Noor double cast when it took him half a century to master it. He muses that Noor could have been the greatest magician ever if he just had a sprinkle more talent. Next, Noor tries to join S's elite training squad, but they tell him he can't because he hasn't gone through the rite of blessing. Noor, being the stubborn mule he is, decides to camp out at the door for days. S can't believe his eyes, this guy is like a bad penny that just won't leave. After a few more days, Noor finally collapses, but S swoops in like a superhero, saying he can teach him the basics, though he can't promise any magical skills. 3 months later, Noor manages to pull off a low heal, but he's bummed because it's not exactly adventurer material. S tries to cheer him up, saying that using healing magic without a blessing is practically a miracle, but Noor still leaves feeling like a deflated balloon. Meanwhile, the sovereigns hear that Noor has vanished, but Mia thinks he's tough enough to handle himself. S believes Noor has some serious potential and suggests they all train him together. Dandel is shocked they all agree on something for once. Fast forward to the present, Noor gives the master his sign, and they're both relieved to see each other in one piece. The master mentions that the construction boss needs a hand with some rubble, and Noor jumps at the chance to help. We see him shoveling away, and the other workers thank him for his efforts. As he reflects on the day's wild events, his stomach growls, reminding him that even heroes need a snack break. So, our buddy knows he can't just throw in the towel, right? Meanwhile, we've got the king, who's like, surprise. Meth was pulling the strings in this war. He's talking about those super exclusive high-purity mana stones that only they can get their hands on. Rain's over there thinking, oh great, more trouble on the horizon. But the king's all smiles, grateful for the folks they can count on, especially since they've got no Lin around to help. Then, Lin swoops in like a superhero, dishing out food to the crowd. She zooms over to Noor, showering him with thanks for everything. His stomach growls louder than a bear, so she hands him some grub and tells him not to turn into a workaholic. As he munches away, he's daydreaming about all the amazing people who've had his back, feeling like a champ ready to take on the world. He's pumped that he's finally an adventurer, just like the heroes from the stories his dad used to read. Just then, one of the guys shouts for him to move on to the next spot. But bam, the bell tower decides it's time for a dramatic exit and crashes down. Noor, being the hero he is, leaps in and deflects it right into his cart. And just like that, folks, this wild ride comes to a pause. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more shenanigans. Thanks for tuning in, and catch you next time.